Hello. We got two people. Hello, James. Hey, everyone watching later. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. I don't know if my audio is all properly configured. Hopefully it is. We'll give everyone a second to join in. Hello. Hello, Nicolas. We have a lot of exciting things to discuss today, loud and clear. Good. Today, we are going to be Greeking out, and I'm hoping that Neo Prototype joins in. Oh, wait. Okay, no. So there we go. Audio good. So Neo Prototype is the winner of last week's giveaway. So I will be putting one of these bad boys in the mail. We're going to be doing weekly Timeline of the Bible poster giveaways. And just so you can see what that looks like. These things have been recently printed on this very nice poster stock, and they will be sent out on a weekly basis to whoever is typing the right password into the chat. Thanks to Matt Baker at Useful Charts. Again, make sure you're subscribed to Useful Charts and check out his website. Useful Charts did an amazing demo of our Timeline of the Bible, and it was fantastic for getting, raising awareness and getting people. Make sure, you definitely, you can frame it however you like. You can tack it up, but this is a new sort of side hustle for me, is taking daily trips to the post office to send these things out. So they are going fast, and I've been getting a lot of good feedback. I have a couple of revisions to do on the live version. Anybody that goes to crossbible.com can click on the timeline button, and it's totally free and available for you to zoom in and out and engage with that timeline. So congratulations to Neo Prototype for winning it last week. We'll see who starts engaging this week to try and win one for that. I'll announce the winners each week and send these things out to you. Make sure you're on the Discord, and you can DM me on Discord. I believe, let's see, let me drop a link to the Patreon as well. So my Patreon members, who I'm very, very grateful to, thank you to everybody who is on Patreon. They are able to engage me directly. So just get me your mailing information, your shipping information, Neo Prototype. A few people have asked on various forums about international shipping. If you are international and you want me to ship international, just you can't do it through the website. The website blocks international orders, unfortunately. It was just complicated to let people put in their address, and I have to figure out just what the shipping is going to be and coordinate that with you directly, because international shipping is a little more complicated. So the topic for today is going to continue to revolve around the interview that I did with Father Evangelos Markadonis at the Kapnikaria Church in Athens over Easter week, because as many of you know, I recorded this interview. I spent a couple of months editing it, doing the voiceover with AI to try to match his voice so that people could listen to it in English, because I didn't want people to have to read subtitles for an hour and a half. And then a lot of people told me, no, I'd rather just read subtitles for an hour and a half. So I have the Greek version right now up on the Patreon for pre-release. So anybody who really wants to listen to it from beginning to end and nothing but Greek, you can go watch that. I'll play a short trailer for that right now. Let's see. Boom. Let me see if hopefully this gives you some good, decent audio quality.
Γεια σε όλους, είμαι ο Στέφανος Νέλσον από την Cross Bible και ανυπομονώ να μοιραστώ μαζί σας μια εμπειρία που έζησα τον Απρίλιο ταξιδεύοντας στην Ελλάδα. Μεγάλη εβδομάδα στην Αθήνα. Γιορτάζεται σε μια από τις παλαιότερες βυζαντινές εκκλησίες της πόλης, την Καπνικαρέα. Ένας ναός του 11ου αιώνα, χτισμένος πάνω στα θεμέλια ενός αρχαίου γερού της Αθηνάς. Ποια είναι τα βασικά στοιχεία που κάνουν το Ορθόδοξο Πάσχα ξεχωριστό σε σχέση με το Δυτικό?
Η βάση της Ορθόδοξης παράδοσης είναι το Πάσχα, είναι η Ανάσταση. Υπάρχει μια ενέργεια εκεί, στον τάφο του Χριστού, η οποία δεν εξηγείται. Είναι ο ιερότερος χώρος του ναού. Το κατά Λουκάν Ευαγγέλιο θέλει να δείξει ότι είναι ένας άνθρωπος θεωμένος. Η πίστη είναι σαν μια φωτιά που πρέπει να καίει μέσα μας, να είναι ζωντανή.
All right, lesson learned. I just have to play this stuff in the same browser. Okay, so now that we've learned that lesson, let me just say that this was a real pain, guys. Like to do the interview in Greek, not my native language, not really super comfortable. I asked if we could do the interview in English. Initially, I spoke to Father Evangelos' brother. He was a little worried that he might not be able to pull off the English. Father Evangelos volunteered to do it in English. Then when I sent him my questions, he's like, I should do this in Greek. So, and then I recorded this intro audio. And because I wanted to sort of like get it done really quickly, I rushed through it. So if you notice, if you watch the English version, I'm like, hey, this is Stephen Nelson from Cross Bible, blah, 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 blah. I then tasked myself with doing voiceover for that in Greek, which is what you heard. So I did that in my microphone. And man, I really had to talk fast to get all of that in. So that is available for pre-release on Patreon. I will make that public eventually. And for now, just as a teaser, I put together a sort of highlight reel that is called Ancient Greek is Alive. And I've posted it in a lot of places, and I'm going to share it with you guys today, because there are some things that I think help to, clarify in the background to this this interview, because he oscillates between speaking modern Greek and ancient Greek, right? He speaks modern Greek in the interview, but he every time he references a Bible verse or hymn, or troparion, which is the Greek version of hymn, he does so with he does so in ancient Greek. And so what I did in this video was try to give on-screen textual overlay with like a parallel English translation so people could actually look. So yeah, this was not a reference to the book Ancient Greek Alive. I was just saying Ancient Greek is alive, which is a caveat, because as you'll see, it's he has an interesting perspective on the use of the language, and I think it's worth kind of watching and reviewing and discussing a little bit. So let's take a look at the beginning of this, and I'll pause and sort of interject every once in a while.
And thanks to the incredible hospitality of Father Evangelos Markadonis, priest, chemist, and theologian, I was not only invited to attend the Paschal celebrations, but I was given an exclusive interview that I'm about to present to you. We spoke Greek during the interview, but I've dubbed over most of it in English for accessibility because I know most of my audience speaks English. However, the parts where he recites ancient Greek texts, I left untranslated so that you can hear the audio and appreciate his command of the liturgical language as a native Greek speaker. So without further ado, I present to you Father Evangelos Markadonis. But why is it important for the public to hear the original language and not a translation in contemporary or modern Greek, let's say?
Here we have a problem. Εδώ έχουμε ένα πρόβλημα. The new generation of Greeks is not very familiar with the ancient language. However, for this reason, an effort has been made to have translations of the hymns, but not to translate the hymns and the prayers of the services and the divine liturgy into modern Greek. We try to maintain this tradition so that the richness of the Greek language is preserved. And this is also a reason why efforts are being made in order that all of the texts can be translated, so that anyone who is inclined to read them, to delve more, to understand more, to study more, to be able to perceive, because essentially the words are not different from modern ones, from modern Greek. the syntax is a little different. Therefore, if one desires and cultivates this ability to understand ancient Greek, he can follow it very, very comfortably. On him that
Okay, so interesting point here. What he's saying essentially is that we do translate these materials from ancient Greek into modern Greek for accessibility, so people can go and sort of study them on their own and figure out what they mean, or at least figure out more closely what they mean. But we don't translate, we don't adapt the liturgy itself into the common language, into modern Greek. Now, there are evangelical churches in Greece that do this, that use modern Greek translations. They read the Bible from the pulpit. Usually a very popular translation for that is a translation by Neophytos Vamvas, which I have on Cross Bible, by the way. But it's really, they're very fixated on this idea that the liturgy needs to be preserved. And it needs to be preserved in the original language, because if they don't preserve it, then who's going to preserve it, right? Like, they've preserved it this long. And it's really thanks to the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Church, that we even have these texts in print, right? Like, a lot of them came out of Greece after the Ottomans took over. And this is I didn't really push him on this, but it comes up a lot, where he indicates that the words are the same, but the syntax is a little different, right? So he's saying that, like, if you were to translate from the ancient Greek originals into modern Greek, that you would just, the word order would be different, but the words are the same. And I think, I don't really fully agree with this. I don't think it's entirely accurate in every nuance. And a lot of this needs to be qualified, because once we start getting into some of these examples, you're going to see that, well, for the most part, it really just depends on the background of the person attending church. Like, if you're a child and you speak modern Greek as your native language, and you attend the service and you hear the liturgy, I know this because my son, my 7-year-old, is basically spoke Greek, was like one of his first languages, Greek and Russian. He goes to a Greek school. He goes to a Greek Orthodox church as part of his, for school and on Sundays, and he hears the liturgy in a combination of English and in ancient Greek, not modern Greek. And for him, it's just like, yeah, he receives it, and he understands, he hears it as Greek. It's not like a totally foreign language for him, but he has a different perspective on it than I do, because I'm somebody who, I actually studied ancient Greek. So when I hear the divine liturgy, I pretty much follow along with everything, but I'm not a Greek person. I am not a native Greek speaker. I didn't grow up with this. So really, it just depends on, like, how churched a person is, and how much somebody has really been steeped in the tradition, attended the liturgies throughout their life, recited the prayers, recited the Nicene Creed. And if you're, a Greek living in Greece, you probably have studied ancient Greek in school. And I welcome anybody who stops by the chat who is Greek. You can chime in on this, and I'll throw your comment on screen. It is a complicated, touchy situation there, because there are instances where, if you're not really, really familiar with the material, it's just going to go over your head, right? That's the case in other Orthodox churches and Catholic churches, where, like, the Latin Mass is going on. If the laity doesn't understand Latin, it's kind of going over their head. But they want the resonance of that liturgical language in the church, and they don't want to sort of, like, water it down and put it into a language everybody understands. And this is kind of also a fundamental difference between where I come from in my Protestant background, of it being sort of required that all of the material needs to be accessible to you in a modern updated Bible translation, King James aside, and that the sermons are in plain English. Everything is in plain English where I come from, right? Like, for a lot of people, they expect to go to church and be able to just follow and understand what's going on. And when you're in an Orthodox church situation or a Catholic church situation, where the liturgy is preserved in a liturgical language that has this elevated status, which, you know, we're going to discuss more with Father Evangelos, it creates a certain difficulty that I personally don't know how a lot of people resolve, right? So it's the same thing happens in the Russian church, where a service might be in Old Church Slavonic, hard to understand for a common Russian person, but if they go to church a lot, they get used to it, right? And especially if they're sort of trained in that. I mean, most Russians don't study Old Church Slavonic as part of their school curriculum, but Greeks do. They study ancient Greek. The Armenian church, they have this also a liturgical form of their language called grabar, which is not really accessible and understandable as far as I'm aware for just people who speak modern Armenian. They also need to either study that intently, or they need to be just very steeped in the church tradition. So so like, with respect, I have to sort of point out that this is already a part of the interview where some red flags are going off, but, you know, I'm being respectful. I'm not really pushing back on, like, well, exactly how much are people really understanding, right? Like this is an interesting point of tension here that I think, you know, I don't know what the resolution to it is, but let's keep watching.
We sing on the night of the resurrection says the following: Idugar ta πάντα πεπλήρωτε φωτός. Light filled everything. Ουρανός και η γη και τα καταχθόνια. Εορταζέτουμ πάσα κτήσεις. Let every creature rejoice, the whole created order. We say the phrase, Christ is risen.
Yeah. So the first example we have, and let me open this in a bit more of a readable format, and we'll take a look at what he actually said here. So first access. So this hymn that he recites here is pretty basic, and it is a good example of something that ideally, yeah, you should. This is not that hard for a Greek person, especially somebody who is already kind of steeped in the tradition, to understand, right? So if we look, let me share this with you guys. Let's see, stop sharing that screen. I'm going to share a slideshow presentation. All right, so slideshow. So can we see? Boom. All right. So idugar ta πάντα πεπλήρωτε φωτός. So for behold, all things are filled with light. Now, this is ancient Greek. This isn't modern Greek, right? They're saying idu. It sounds fancy. It sounds like, to the Greek speaking ears, like, okay, it's elevated. It's kind of like King James Bible English, like behold, right? We don't say behold, we say look, right? In Greek, they don't say idu, they say kita. But we all know when we hear behold, okay, this is biblical language, right? Uranos ke yi, te ke yi. He skipped the te, but uranos, yi, same words. So what he said is correct. Like, those are the same words in modern Greek. They don't need to translate those, right? Kita katakhthonia, right? And the nethermost regions, or the underworld, right? Eortazeton. So may all creation celebrate pasiktisis, right? Pasiktisis. So again, like, we're still in the realm of like comprehensibility for the average modern Greek person attending the liturgy. Tin egersin Christou. So the resurrection of Christ. He didn't finish the last two lines. Any estereute, so in which it is established. He didn't finish to get all the way to the end of the resurrection hymn. But this is a good example of one that he, you know, when he recites it, he drops into ancient Greek. Obviously, he's just doing this very naturally. He probably says this all the time. And you know, even though, yes, the word order, I don't know. I don't necessarily think the difference really is ultimately boils down to syntax. It boils down a lot to the forms of the words, right? So for example, when you have here pasa theses, right? Like, this would be oli, you know, like in modern Greek, you would probably say like oli i thesis, right? Like you would have a different, this is ending would turn into an ita. Like you can kind of imagine how, as a modern Greek speaker, you would be sort of translating this in your head if you were attending a church service, right? Like you wouldn't really bat an eye at it, especially if you're used to it. So here we're seeing like basically, you know, one-to-one correspondence, no issues, like, you know, it's all pretty comprehensible, right? Let's keep going with the video. Boom.
And sing the hymn Χριστός ανέστη εκ νεκρών θάνατον πατήσας και εν της μνήμας η ζωήν χαρισάμενος for 40 days. But not only that, every Sunday it's called Kyriaki in Greek because it is the Lord's Day, the day which is dedicated to the Lord. So this day is celebrated as the resurrection. So every Sunday we celebrate the resurrection of Christ. Why? So that this message of victory over death might pass through us. That is why in the Nicene Creed we say, προσδοκώ Ανάσταση νεκρών και ζωήν του μέλλοντος αιώνος.
And the link.
So here we have the, let's see, let's add this back in here. We have this Paschal Troparion, right? The Christ is risen Troparion, the hymn that is really well known. If you have the ability to attend an Orthodox Easter service on the Saturday night that starts at like 10 p.m. and goes all the way to 2 a.m. If you attend one of these services, you have to know this hymn, right? Like it is obligatory. Sorry, it is. There we go. So this Troparion is, for the most part, I think, familiar not just by its resemblance to how it would be in modern Greek. It's just one like they all know by heart, right? Christos anesti ek nekron. Christ is risen from the dead. Thanaton patisas, right? So through death or by death, thanaton patisas. Patisas is an aorist participle, right? So it's saying like having trampled death, right? He is risen, completing the action of conquering or trampling patisas, literally like with his feet, death. Ketisentis mnemasi zoin harisamenos. So, and to those who are in their tombs, like tisentis mnemasin, zoin harisamenos, this is a participle, harisamenos, having granted life. So having conquered death, having granted life, he is resurrected. Look, ketisentis mnemasi, if you just hear that, and we're going to get a little bit into the pronunciation issue, it's not like, I mean, when I first heard it, I didn't know what it said, right? Like ketisentis mnemasi, because this oi, the combination of omicron iota in modern Greek sounds like e, right? And so it's really when you just hear it for the first time, if you haven't studied it in advance, if you haven't memorized it, if you haven't grown up in the church hearing it sung, it could throw you for a loop. You'd be like, ketisentis mnemasi, like what does that mean? And then you look at the text, and that's, a lot of them have the text right in front of them, right? So they're able to read along. So that's the advantage. So the question Prototype asked is, would it be simpler, for example, than a Romance language speaker listening to a Latin sermon? Yeah, I think it would be simpler. I think also, like I said, it depends on, do you have the text in front of you? Have you been going to the church your whole life? Are you already familiar with it? I think if you just stopped your average person and you threw that at them, they'd probably be able to nail it down for the most part. Like maybe the way that the aorist participles are used may be a little tricky. It really just depends on how much exposure somebody has to ancient Greek or church Greek, liturgical Greek. It's really a question of exposure. And then in the Nicene Creed, a lot of them will just straight up recite the Nicene Creed in the original Greek, right? And so this is something that most of them, if they're really churched people, they will know it already, right? So prosdoko anastasi nekron ke zoin tu melodos eonos, right? So I seek the resurrection of the dead from the dead, and the life in the age to come. Again, what he said pretty much holds up. the words here are correct. I mean, the words here correspond for the most part, maybe not prosodoko, but like a modern Greek speaker doesn't have much issue here. Modern Greek speakers may have more issues when they're going into classical texts. You know, if they're going all the way into Plato, that could be problematic. But for the most part, the New Testament is close enough to where they kind of get it, right? It is not inaccessible to them, but it's probably closer than it would be for your average Romance speaker attending a Latin mass. But it is, you know, there are some difficulties that we'll get to later on when we get into more complex texts. So here is the question that was sort of, so get,
Is the language of the New Testament. Yes, it's the original language.
Exactly. It is the language, the same language of the New and Old Testament, which, as we know, before Christ, was translated into Greek into the common Hellenistic dialect of the Alexandrian period.
Then the language is.
so this is an interesting designation where when I ask him about the language, I say, this is the language of the New Testament. His response is, yeah, it's the language of the New Testament and the Old Testament because it was translated, right? Like they are really putting emphasis on the Greek Septuagint as their original version of the Old Testament that is sort of like on par with the Hebrew. Like he had to stick that in there, right? That like, oh, it's also the language of the Old Testament that we use, right? And he does not call it Koine Greek. And this is something that's always, this is a sort of pet peeve of mine. I don't feel too strongly about it because we have a term in English called koine, which I have a video on Cross Bible that I can link that gets into this, which is basically a term for a linguistic phenomenon that even happened in the United States of America, in the original 13 colonies of the United States. When people were coming into the United States, or before the United States, right? In the original colonies from East Anglia, from the West Country of England, from Northern Ireland, from all these different places, speaking different versions, different dialects of English. When those people blend together in a common community, they end up creating, it ends up triggering a process called koineization, right? And I get into this a little bit in a video that I will post in the chat. It's the Greek versus Hebrew video, so more detail is available here. And I kind of explain a little bit there what koine, when people say koine, what actually means. Sorry. Koine is a linguistic term, so you will get Greek people who will push back and say it's not pronounced koine, it's pronounced kini, right? Because they say kini, and that's where it is right there. Kini means common. Now, I have a stack of books that I'm going to be reviewing, that I'm going to be showing to you soon that I've prepared next to me, that include one very important book. So this book by Jeffrey Horrocks, it's fantastic. Greek, A History of the Language and its Speakers. If you go to the Cross Bible website, you will find a link to study resources and you'll find a link to this book. Now, if you look up the term kini, koine in this book, you get basically a huge, like you get pages in the index of the different kinds of koine, right? Like of what constitutes a common language. Great. Yes. Great book. So one thing that Professor Horrocks points out here is that there are all of these different sort of sub varieties of what we could consider a kini glossa, right? Or like a common kini dialectos, a common dialect. So we have Byzantine koine, right? Koine of the Byzantine period. We have the Hellenistic / Roman koine. We have the koine during the Ottoman period, and we have the modern koine and we have the Koineization of ancient dialects. The reason we say Koine and the Greeks say Kini is because Koine is a linguistic term in our language, and because it is pronounced, hey Marcel, it is pronounced Koine according to reconstructed academic pronunciation. So yes, it's a thing for me too. When people call it Koine or biblical, thank you for the compliment on the video. Yeah, so we have all of these different sort of terms, and the pet peeve that I have, and I experienced this last week, where I saw an Instagram post from a pretty popular channel, and I'm not going to name names, but somebody mentioned something about like, what does this Kini Greek word mean, right? And they'll call it a Kini Greek word, or let's learn the Koine alphabet, or how long have you been studying Koine? Or yeah, as Neoprototype points out, it's like calling Latin vulgar Latin. I don't know if it's quite like calling Latin vulgar Latin, but yeah, it's common. Vulgar, it means common. It doesn't mean vulgar as in insulting. It means it's like the, you know, the common variety of the language that's spoken by the common people. But that, like, that term in and of itself, when applied to the language of the Bible, becomes complex, because there is also the elevated, yeah, Kini Greek. So there are writers in the Hellenistic period who are very well educated, who are not the common people by any stretch of the imagination, and they are writing in what we now classify as the Kini, right, or the Hellenistic common dialect. So that is why when you see on screen, most of the time, whenever I reference Koine, so that people, because I know other people know it like that, right? So you would never catch me saying like, oh, let's study the Koine alphabet. Like, for me, that it just sounds totally ridiculous, because like the alphabet has never changed. Like, it's just the Greek alphabet. There are very few situations in my daily life where I find the need to distinguish the Greek language with the term Koine, unless it's just for the benefit of another person that I know understands it that way. But to say like, oh, how long have you been studying Koine? Well, I've been studying Greek for like over 10 years. And Koine is just sort of a form of the Attic dialect, a sort of simplified form of the Attic dialect on its way to Byzantine Greek, on its way to modern Greek. The reason it is called common is because when you look up the earliest references to where Hellenistic grammarians like Dionysios Thrax, and like, you know, I was going to pull them up on today's slideshow, but I didn't have time to dig them out. They refer, like, there's a reason why we retroactively refer to it that way, and it is because the Hellenistic grammarians who started using this term were using it in the sense of like, oh, okay, there's the Doric dialect, and there's the Attic dialect, and then we're all converging basically on a common form, right? So if you want to say something in a specific dialect that's like for a specific region, you say it this way. But in the common variety of our times, we say it this way. It could refer to common pronunciation, right? Kini profora, or it could refer to the common dialect, which was the Alexandrian dialect. But they didn't really, for them, it was still just Greek. It's just Greek has these different varieties, and this is the variety that we're sort of converging on. This is our literary standard, or at least the emerging standard of that period. It's complex, and I feel like a lot of the time when people are using the term Koine, they're doing it to put boundaries around it, so that they can basically say, we are interested in this particular narrow slice of the language, separating it from classical. Classical is a different thing. Separating it from Homeric. Homeric's a different thing. And most importantly, separating it from the later Byzantine literature, which we don't want to delve into, we as in, you know, scholars in the field, and especially modern Greek, because modern Greek is just like, we're allergic to it, right? Like this is sort of the perspective. So they make it seem as if vulgar Latin is a different language from literary Latin. It's more of a style difference, not so much a different language. Yeah, exactly. It's a stylistic difference. in the sort of formality spectrum, where classical Attic after the classical period is always the sort of standard by which the formality of the language is measured, right? And so in the second sophistic and the later, in like during the Hellenistic period, you have these revivals of people trying to sort of write in high Attic style, and they're still kind of like in the realm of what we would consider Koine, right? So once you kind of become aware of the fact that, first of all, Kini just means common, and you start interacting with Greeks, like in this scenario where it's like, if I were talking to him in English and I use the term koine, I don't even know if he would understand what I'm saying. I have met Greeks that say koine, or they'll say kini, and they're trying to sort of, because they know that I know that that's what it's called. You'll find them online. It's not that Greeks have no idea what we're talking about, but for the most part, it's not a useful term to people who actually speak Greek, because it just means common. So you're talking about common Greek, and because modern Greek is considered it's called Kini Neoeleniki, right? Like it's the common New Hellenic glossa, the language, because Greek has all of these different varieties, and the common form of the language that we call Standard Modern Greek, or that is the uniting form that they all sort of converge on and have agreed this is the official language, which has taken a little while to standardize. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but this is why he gives this sort of, he talks about the Alexandrian dialect, right? So for him, when he says Alexandrian, he's referring to what a lot of people out here call Koine. He just doesn't really call it that. So I had to sort of add some specificity to this particular part of the video.
Into the common Hellenistic dialect of the Alexandrian period.
Then the language is considered holy?
I wouldn't put it like that, but I would say that it is very important that this tradition, which we have inherited for 20 centuries now, that we also try to preserve.
But can we say that the Greek church, the Orthodox church in Greece, has some advantage when it comes to the language?
Of course, there's some advantage when it comes to the language. Here in Greece, what we're trying to do, as we said, is to preserve the language intact, because that gives us access to a broader richness. So no, we don't consider this language to be a museum piece. And even today, services and hymnographic texts are still being written today by contemporary hymnographers in the exact same language, ancient Greek. In fact,
Okay. So this is an interesting point that he makes, is that yes, there are, like, I think I have a book here. I have several books that are written by contemporary Greek writers that are effectively, which one was it? I thought I pulled it off my shelf, that are effectively written in, yes. One second. So here's an example. This is a book, το ζήτημα της μεταφράσεως της Αγίας Γραφής εις την Νεοελληνική. So this is the question of the question, or the issue of translating the Holy Scripture into modern Greek. This is a book that was published very recently that I found very fascinating because, 2004. So this was published in 2004, and it's written in Katharevousa, right? So Katharevousa is this sort of formal register of Greek that was officially abolished, right? It's no longer, it is defunct, but people still write and publish books in it. And it is kind of this Frankenstein's monster. It is this combination of modern Greek and ancient Greek that was established when the Greek state was formed, to basically revive ancient Greek. That was the goal of it, right? And that's I get into this in the video, that the people who established the Greek state felt that, the way that the language has developed over time, it has gone down, that the quality is decreased, right? Like we basically don't like the trajectory of modern Greek. We want to reverse it, and we want to literally turn back time and get people on board with a new, with speaking ancient Greek. These were all highly educated individuals who created this whole project, and it has lasted to this day, to where, like, if you are just a speaker of Standard Modern Greek who's not really steeped in ancient Greek, this is arguably a book that is in quote unquote modern Greek, but this is like effectively ancient Greek, right? Like, if you don't know ancient Greek, you're to have a really hard time reading this. It's full blown traditional polytonic script, like with all of the diacritical marks all over it. And because it is a sort of a Bible focused book, they are writing it in, church Greek. And there are a lot of books like this. So this takes you back to this sort of idea of like, well, what advantage does it really give you to have modern Greek under your belt, right? If you're approaching ancient Greek, the people who wrote that book obviously have a pretty good handle on ancient Greek, but they, when they refuse to publish a book on this topic for whatever reason in modern Greek. It's a very interesting phenomenon called the glossikozitima in Greek, right? The language question, the Greek language question. And there are other books that I would recommend, such as, first of all, Jeffrey Horrocks' book goes into the Greek language question in detail, going all the way from like, Mycenaean Greek to modern Greek, right? This is the most comprehensive resource on the market. And Peter Mackridge's Language and National Identity in Greece, fascinating book. I will be probably taking a lot of this material and making videos out of it, because it's really great for people this from 1766 to 1766 to 1976. This period of basically like the Greek language question, this standoff between ancient Greek and modern Greek, right? And I have an old Quartus Learning Greek book, with those diacritics. And yeah, so that is I'm going to show off a few of my resources. So this book, is this the one you're talking about? So I have this Essential Modern Greek Grammar. So when I first went to Greece it was like 11 years ago, I brought this grammar with me. And this thing is also in full-blown polytonic Greek. It's all modern Greek. It's not ancient Greek, but they write all of like the diacritical marks. Like, it's a very conservative, basically outdated. I mean, when was this thing printed? 1987. So 1987, modern Greek is very much like official, but the script hadn't quite updated, right? And then what do you think of the label Biblical Greek? Don't like it. I don't like it. Look, if I'm just talking about like the Greek in the Bible, it is biblical, right? But can we really say that what Father Evangelos referred to was that there are hymnographic texts, there are hymns, troparia in the Greek church that are written and they're composed today by contemporary Greek speakers, effectively in what you might call biblical Greek. But is it biblical Greek? Like, if I take a Greek phrase and I simply sort of dress it up, like, in ancient Greek guise, if it's katharevousa, is katharevousa biblical Greek? No, katharevousa is not in the Bible. You can go and buy a newspaper in katharevousa. It's effectively modern Greek with like ancient Greek spelling, and it sort of bends to the will of ancient Greek grammar rules. And we'll go over some of those, like in pronunciation. The pronunciation is modern Greek, but the phonology, like the way that the stresses move in the word, they very much conform to the standards of ancient Greek. A few other resources. So this was my entry point, right? This is the very first grammar, because I was in Greece, right? I'm not going to sit in Greece and like learn ancient Greek. Like, this was just like my very first introduction to literally the alphabet. So this was the book that I read to learn the alphabet on the plane ride there, which I already knew Russian. So it's, Russian is already very close to the Greek alphabet. So that I had a little discount. And by the time I got off the plane, I had, kind of learned this enough to where I was like, oh, okay, I can read these signs. This was when I caught the bug, was being in Greece, reading this book, but then having to face this challenge of like, well, what do I start with? Do I continue down the path of modern Greek, or do I at what point do I shift to ancient Greek? Because that was ultimately my interest. These books right here, very, very essential. Cortina Method Conversational Modern Greek. Is this the one? Cortes Learning? Yeah, so Conversational Modern Greek. This one also is in full-blown polytonic script, right? So it's, let's see what the publication date on this one is. 1959 original publication to 1990. So you get, if you get these books that are like published in the late 80s, they're still holding on. They're still like kind of perpetuating the legacy of Katarabousa. When you look things up, they're going to give you these sort of elevated forms from ancient Greek, and the grammar tables you're going to find in this thing are going to be divided. I think there's, you're not going to see it on camera anyway, but they will show you like Katarabousa tables, right? That effectively are, this is ancient Greek, right? So you're learning modern Greek, but you're getting ancient Greek along the way through Katarabousa. So yeah, Cortina, exactly. So this Cortina book is great. Like I'm gonna adapt a lot of this into the Greek learning material that I'm gonna be putting out on Cross Bible. I'll put that on Patreon, by the way. So if you're interested in this stuff, I'm gonna start adapting this into video courses that will first be available on Patreon. They will go on the Cross Bible website because it's super useful stuff. Also, Teach Yourself Modern Greek. A lot of these are out of print, so I don't really, I'm teasing them, but you might not be able to get a copy of these. These are sort of at this point remnants of the past, but I will try to adapt some of this stuff. Also, full-blown polytonic script, right? Initially, when I learned modern Greek, I wrote everything in polytonic script because I was just, I was always straddling the fence between ancient Greek and modern Greek. Have you read Hebrew is Greek with a Mask On? No, I haven't. I've not read that. Sounds interesting, though. It's a good title. And then I would trigger the Ammonites by pointing out that Galen wrote in and argued that for medical texts, koine should be used. So technically, Galen wrote in biblical Greek. Yeah, and that's another weird thing is like, okay, did Josephus write in biblical Greek? Did Philo write in biblical Greek? I don't know really what, Galen, if people are writing in the same language contemporary to the New Testament and to the translation of the Old Testament in the Septuagint, to how is the term biblical Greek useful, right? It's useful in like the title of a textbook, like the basics of biblical Greek. That's an eye-catching thing that like somebody's like, okay, I want to read the Bible. I want to learn like what language do I need to know to read the Bible? Okay, well, if I see a book on the shelf that's called biblical Greek, I'm going to pick that up. So I see it more as a marketing term than anything else. And it is used to kind of draw this sort of artificial boundary around the Bible in concentric circles, where it's like the Bible's in this inner concentric circle. You're pretending that the New Testament and the translation of the Septuagint are in the same form of the language, even though they're a little different. And then the concentric circle around that would be like Koine Greek, and maybe the concentric circle around that would be Hellenistic Greek. But I think all of those boundaries begin to blur when you really start realizing that, okay, well then you got to draw a concentric circle around, the Byzantine Koine. And then where does modern Greek fit in? When the thing about Horrocks is you don't get to a page of Horrocks where all of a sudden he's like, by this date, Greek, ancient Greek is dead. Like there's no milestone here for the death of ancient Greek, where after which he says, okay, and now that ancient Greek has died, we're now going to get into the section of the book where we're going to talk about modern Greek, right? There is no such transition, right? It's all gradual. It goes from beginning. It's just this ongoing spectrum, where that's also difficult to do in English, where it's like, okay, maybe Shakespeare marks the border of where it's like, okay, we're getting into like early modern English and we're transitioning from Middle English. The printing press has like a sort of fossilizing effect on a lot of the spelling and the transition between the Middle English period and the modern English period, but it's a little arbitrary. And then also in terms of, so I recommended Peter Mackridge if you want to get into the Greek language question, which I will again continue to produce content around. And then Peter Mackridge has the Oxford Grammar of the Modern Greek Language, which is also like an incredibly informative book for people studying modern Greek, but also deals with a lot of these issues of this sort of transition from ancient Greek to modern Greek. And then what is we? So I think they're touching on Dr. Kipp scoffing at the concept of symbolism by maintaining the position that biblical Greek could be interpreted symbolically with any elements of dualism romanized. Yeah, I don't know if I'm not reading too deep into biblical Greek. I'm just saying that there a lot of people really want to box in the language of the Bible as biblical Greek, as Koine Greek. You can see that this the Father Evangelos is describing it in terms of just the dialect of the Alexandrian period. It is that general to him. So that he is casting a very wide net, very cautiously. And I think it's because when he says that there are contemporary writers that are translating and adapting and composing hymns in effectively the same language of the Bible, that's what he means. It's like the Bible is the standard. It's you could say that the Greek Orthodox liturgy is in biblical Greek, but for me, biblical Greek is just the language that the Bible is written in, right? And then at what year did Zoomer English begin? When did Common English, Kini English transition to the based on God bet skibbity English? Yeah, Zoomer English, Generation Alpha English. It's a little sus. I have to say, it is a little sus. And let's see. Let's get back to this troparion, so we stay on track with what we're looking at in this video. Hold on, let me add this to the stage.
Same language.
Yes.
Ancient Greek. In fact, the hymn, the Troparion, that we sing on both of those days says the following. Την κοινήν Ανάστασιν πρωτού σου πάθους πιστούμενος, εκ νεκρών ήγηρας των Λάζαρων Χριστέ ο Θεός. Όθεν και εμείς, ως υπέδες, τα της νίκης σύμβολα φέροντες, σύ τον νικητή του θανάτου γόμεν, ως ανάεμ της υψίστης, ευλογημένος ο ερχόμενος εν ονόματι Κυρίου. What does this thing mean in a nutshell? That we are celebrating the triumphal entry of Christ into Jerusalem, who now comes humbly on a donkey, yet as King, as Messiah, as Savior, as Redeemer, a troparion.
So that is, let's pull that up in another window and take a look a little bit more closely at what he just recited. Now, again, as I mentioned, we have the term kini here, right? Tin kinin anastasin, right? So the common resurrection. So again, if we're saying that koine is like a specific term that refers to the language of the Bible, again, like to a Greek person, it rings a little differently, right? So this is the kini anastasis, or kini anastasi in modern Greek. Not much difference. It's the common resurrection, the resurrection of all people, right? Like after Jesus' resurrection. Protusu pathus pistumenos, so before your passion confirming. And I think these are like translations that I got online. I was trying to, one interesting thing is that when you look up these hymns, and you try to like go to like the Greek Orthodox archdiocese like website, the Americanized or anglicized, if you find anglicized or English translations of these hymns, there isn't really, as far as I could tell, like official versions. Like when I was trying to line these up and get them in phrase by phrase, sometimes there are different versions floating around, and I had to kind of pick and choose which I was going to use. Ek nekron igiras ton Lazaron, so from the dead you raised Lazarus, or I changed the word order here, so you might see raised Lazarus from the dead. Christeo Theos, so Christ our God. Othen ke emis os ipedes, so therefore we too, as did the youths, tatis niki symbola ferodes, the symbols of victory carrying, awkward in English, but that's what it says. Sito nikititu thanatu vomen, to you, the victory over death, we cry out. Osana entis absistis, evlogimenos o erhomenos en onomati Kyriou. So, Hosanna in the highest, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Again, a text that is pretty basic. This is totally, biblical Greek, Koine Greek. He feels very, very comfortable saying it. He says it very fast. It rolls off the tongue. To maybe like a student of seminary, this might sound kind of like gibberish. right? Like that is sort of this core conflict of like when you are approaching the task of learning Greek and the topic of pronunciation comes up. I suspect that one of the reasons why when I share this interview and even this like condensed version, right? Like I share it on various like biblical Greek forums and groups and, and on Facebook, and like, I get a lot of like crickets for the most part, right? Like some people like it, some people, like I see the analytics, so there is definitely a portion, a good number of people watching this stuff and liking it and benefiting from it. This interview, like a video like this with the text on screen that like has a native speaker reciting it, man, I would have killed for this like 10 years ago, right? Like this kind of stuff didn't really exist back then. He does speak the Greek very fast, and it's not just that he's like it's not a race for him. It's just like this is such a natural, like, to clarify, when I say that, like, as a native speaker, like listening to his cadence as a native speaker, it hits differently than going to like, the SBL biblical conference and hearing someone read a paper where there's like a sentence of Greek that they can like barely get out of their mouth, right? Like where you kind of stutter. And a lot of those people, even though they're very like they have a certain expertise, like I'm not knocking them. Like I heard a lot of really informative analyses of Greek at the conference. There's a different vibe when you're hearing somebody read it who is really this comfortable with the language, and he has to get credit. So the words for the and seem to bleed into the next word exactly. And the thing about the words for the and, right? Like if you so this one. Okay, so oath and kemis. So this phrase right here, like therefore we too, we also, right? Kemis. Um, this is going to sound like hoten kai hemes, right? Like you're going to hear people say it like that in outside of Greece, right? And what they're doing is they're reconstructing, what it would have sounded like in the classical period, and then maybe moving it forward. You'll hear people saying like, Hoth and Kai, hey Mace, right? Like just sort of, it'll roll off the tongue as if it were American English because that they feel comfortable with that, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when they hear him saying Oth and Kemis, they're not going to understand what he just said, right? It's just going to go in one ear and out the other. And for a Greek person, like I had someone post a comment under one of these videos to say like, well, what pronunciation system are they using is what I got in one comment from somebody when I posted it on Facebook, because they didn't. I assume that there are certain people that if they didn't use the system that they're used to, they don't even want to listen to it, right? And that's I think the reason why it's not sticking a lot of the time, because why would you listen to it? Like if this sounds like gibberish to you, it's not helpful. And so when you hear a Greek person say ke, because the alpha iota says it's you don't know what kemis means, right? Ke imis, kai he mes. You will only understand it if you hear it with Erasmian or some kind of reconstructed pronunciation system where it says kai he mes. And I get that, but at the same time, if you think about it from a Greek person's perspective, well, what else are they going to say? Like ke is the word and in Greek. So it doesn't, there's like, if I said kai, like if I asked my son, who's is a, like native Greek speaker, like what does kai mean? He's not going to know what that is. So it's an unreasonable expectation. It would be inappropriate for a priest in an Orthodox church to an Orthodox, Greek speaking community to use any other form of pronunciation. It's like, so even though, yes, it's hard for someone to understand who doesn't have his ear attuned to it. I don't really have a problem with it. But the thing that we're going to get to is that, kemis can be difficult to understand in certain contexts, right? Let's continue. Hold on a second. All right, stop share. I have to like remove and add it every single time. Let's see the next part.
unworthy, the one whom he finds,
I got
whom he
back. I didn't realize it wasn't on the stage.
follows.
So, but okay. So before
Νυμφίος
that was the audio. So I'm going to play this video. So one thing to note here is he starts interjecting, right? He pauses when he's reading this particular hymn because there are places where he recognizes that the words are different from modern Greek, which is something he recently just said that isn't the case. He said the words are the same, it's just the syntax, the word order is different. If that were the case, there wouldn't really be any need to translate on the fly, right? Like it would, like he would just expect, he's clarifying for the modern Greek speaker who's listening, who might not have who may have missed the meaning of what he just said. So it's, it's an interesting phenomenon where you have him, like when he pauses and sort of translates in modern Greek, I've dubbed over the translation in English so you can kind of get a sense of what he's doing, stopping the ancient Greek, explaining, translating on the fly. If you sign up on the Cross Bible Patreon, you can hear this whole thing in Greek, and you can, just read the subtitles. You can turn the subtitles on in English. It says, okay, so Neoprototype. I think using a classical pronunciation also would sound wrong and anachronistic to me. That's why I'm an advocate for learning the various pronunciations. It's not that difficult to at least know. Yeah. I mean, you can learn the different pronunciations like I do. You can, throw them out every once in a while. But if it's going to be your default, if you make it your default, if that's the only form of the language that you sort of become accustomed to, you're never going to get this. This is just always going to be inaccessible to you, which maybe you don't care, right? Like you just, this isn't a resource that you necessarily want access to. I sure benefit from having access to it. But let's listen to where he's pausing, and then we'll pull up the text.
Ιδού ο νυμφίος έρχεται εν το μέσο της νυκτός during the night και μακάριος ο δούλος ο νευρίσει γρηγορούντα. He shall be truly happy who shall see the bridegroom and shall be awake. Ανάξιος δε πάλι ο νευρίσει ραθυμούντα. He will be counted unworthy, the one whom he finds in that state still asleep. Βλέπε ουν ψυχή μου, μη το ύπνο κατανεχθείς, ή να μη το θανάτο παραδοθείς και της βασιλείας έξω κλειστείς. Αλλά ανάνυψον κράζουσα, Άγιος, Άγιος ο Θεός ημών, προστασίες των ασωμάτων, referring to the holy angels, και σώσον ημάς. So we see that the hymnology of our church prepares us in order to welcome the King of Glory who is coming to be crucified. Then,
so he's basically saying that, he's reading these passages that have this really deep meaning. He's sticking to what it actually says. Like theoretically, he could have just read a translation of that in modern Greek, right? He wouldn't have to pause. He wouldn't have to explain things. But his position really is that this hymnology, when I ask him, is it a holy language then? And he's like, no, it's not a holy language just because it's in Greek, right? He doesn't, I don't feel like I really got a good explanation of what it really is, right? And I think I think partly, in my exploration of studying, Eastern Orthodox theology, which, and it's been a topic of study for me for a really long time now. And I actually, the book on this that's really good is Themata Orthodoxis Ecclesiastikis Catechesis, right? So this is a catechism manual for Eastern Orthodoxy. It's very beautifully printed, again, polytonic Greek, but modern Greek in polytonic script. I think really there is just a sort of mystery about it. Like they want that kind of, even if they're not going to come out and say like, this is a holy language, it is sacred. It's sacred to them, right? And they need it to be in the original because they're sort of preserving this tradition, and they want the sort of resonance of that original language without, quote unquote, corrupting it, even though he does pause and just sort of explain like, okay, this is what this means. This is what this means. He really, he says, for those who take the time to study it, it kind of enriches your understanding. But what happens for those who don't take the time to study it? That's the thing. Is like you really, the burden is on you as an an Orthodox Christian attending one of these services that's in either an ancient Greek, or maybe it's old church Slavonic service, or it's in any sort of ancestral form of your language. Like you kind of have to get with the program, right? And you have to study it. So that's Neoprototype says he was offended by Erasmian and dislikes Luke's Lucian model, where he's just smashing classical with modern Greek, pronouncing ch as k. I don't know. I would vouch for Luke's understanding. I like Luke a lot, and I like the Lucian model. I think Lucian is at least getting us closer to a more authentic sounding Greek. At least it's getting us away from Erasmian, because there are certain people who I think who are reared on Erasmian, or who, for whom Erasmian is appealing, and they want to take baby steps, but they don't want to jump. They're not going to jump into modern Greek. So I think as a way to sort of get Erasmian out the door, I think Luke's Lucian pronunciation is a good step forward in the right direction. So here the dismissal hymn of the bridegroom, idou onymphos erchete. So kita erchete onymphos, right? Here we got like straight up modern Greeks, no problem with that, right? Ento mesotis niktos. Then he says mesosti nikta. So he paused at the second line to translate this into modern Greek, because ento mesotis niktos. I mean, I think most Greeks are just going to follow that. They're going to see it in their textbook. It's not common for a Greek to hear in the midst of the night in this way, right? He dumbs it down for us and just says mesosti nikta, right? Tis niktos is the third declension genitive of e nikta or e nix in ancient Greek, or some might say nukes, right? Like this with this vowel lip rounding of the vowel e to e, nukes. That's the sort of reconstructed pronunciation of that. So ento mesotis niktos ke makarios odulos onevrisi grigorunda. So here he also paused, because grigorunda is really not standard modern Greek, right? Like he translated it as xipnios, so somebody who is awake, right? Who is vigilant or awake. So you can see here again the idea that like all the words are the same, but the syntax is different. Well, no, we're not. What we're dealing with here is not a difference in syntax. What we're dealing with here is a difference in semantics. The words are different, right? Anaxios de palin onevrisi rathimunda, right? And unworthy is he for whom he will find heedless. And then vlepum psychimu, beware therefore, O my soul, that you will not be overcome by sleep, lest you be given up to death and be shut out from the kingdom. He reads that through, no translation, no pause. So I think what the goal is here is to have the original text pronounced out loud. And this is like probably delving into some, advanced Orthodox theology that I'm not qualified to speak on. But I think the idea is that there is a sense that the language itself, when it is recited in the liturgy, has this kind of like magical power, right? It does have it is imbued with a kind of sacred resonance that needs to be preserved and recited in the church in the original language. But we can make print materials available in translations, and people are welcome to delve into it, to study it, to understand it more deeply. But we got to stick to the original. And then, yeah. So who is Lucian? So Lucian is who the pronunciation system is named after, Lucianos. But what that is, I think I can introduce this this topic now. So what we have in the sort of like 10 years ago, let's put it this way, like when a little over 10 years ago when I started, and Erasmian was really, really much more dominant than it is today. Before, it was like Erasmian is all you would find, right? There wasn't anything else. You had this system where basically every single vowel or vowel combination is meant to have its own unique sound. And depending on where you are from, Erasmian will sound, either American, or it will sound like British, or it will sound German or Italian. There were all these local varieties of Erasmian. So for example, the combination of epsilon iota in German Erasmian sounds like I. So the preposition into, which I say is, right? It's epsilon iota sigma, is pronounced in Germany like ice. And so, and sometimes you'll hear like an American using German Erasmian saying ice. And like for me, when I hear ice, I just don't even know what, like I have to sort of think, okay, that's German Erasmian. Whereas like other like American Erasmians, people using the American Erasmian system would say ace, right? Or they'll diphthongize it. They'll say a. Even though technically, historically, it was never a, it was always like eh. It was effectively pronounced the exact same way that eta or ita is pronounced. So you had a shift fairly recently from Erasmian to classical Attic reconstructed pronunciation, according to what is the book Vox Graeca, right? Sidney Allen. So here you basically had the next step in the reconstructed pronunciation movement, where people were like, well, Erasmian pronunciation has some mistakes. The local varieties are invalid. We get a lot of, we really want to analyze all of the inscriptions and all of the historical and linguistic material we have, thanks to the work of historical linguists, and reconstruct the pronunciation of the language with all of the tones. So all of the diacritical marks that show when the intonation goes up and down, and, this was a project of people that were like really geeking out on how to, get ready for the invention of the time machine, where if you could, go back in time, you'll actually theoretically sound like Plato, right? You're gonna sound like a classical Attic speaker. Whether or not that's effective, I don't know, because frankly, when we study a foreign language that's a living language that that has living native speakers, we still miss our mark, right? Because we all sort of carry over our native accents into foreign languages for the most part. So I don't know if exactly like if that hypothetically, if you did get into the time machine and go back in time and use the best representation that we could reconstruct of a classical pronunciation, whether or not you would actually hit your target and go back in time and people would be like, oh, wow, that guy sounds like he was like born and raised in Athens. I don't think that's the case. A is just a long epsilon, right? Yeah. So it used to be called e mega, right? This combination of epsilon iota, which for a long time people thought was a diphthong a, right? Now to the question of who's Lucian, right? Who is Lucian? Well, Randall Booth, somebody I met at the recent SPL conference, great guy. He started doing some work on the pronunciation of the Hellenistic period, trying to figure out, well, okay, we've got the reconstruction of classical down, right? And now we got to figure out, well, how applicable is that to the Bible? Like, does it make sense? Like, if we're going to say that reading the Bible with modern Greek pronunciation is somehow intrinsically bad for some reason, well, wouldn't like it also be kind of weird to use classical to read the Bible? Like, wouldn't you want to kind of, arrive somewhere in the middle and use the pronunciation that Paul would have used? Like, what did Paul sound like? What did Mark sound like? What did Luke sound like? What did these authors, whatever their names were, who wrote the text, what did they pronounce it like? And because we assume that they must have differentiated between a lot of these vowels and stuff. So you get Booth's pronunciation, which just is a lot closer to modern Greek. But there are some complexities there, because in his system, the diphthong oi, which everybody reconstructs, koine, well, he reconstructs that in the first century transition between oi and where it ended up was e, that there was a transition period in the Hellenistic period where it sounded like u. And so in his system, he would say kune instead of, so you go from classical koine to then kune, and then kine, and then kini. There are all these stages. And yes, they're very well documented. Yes, they're very well understood. But is it really helpful to like, if the idea of Erasmian was we want the combination of omicron iota to always be oi, because then it's like if you hear it, if your teacher is saying it out loud and your students are taking notes, they can write down what he said. Whereas if he says kini, well, is that like Kini? Like, are they yodas? Are they etas? Are they epsilons? There are challenges that modern Greek puts on a student that Erasmian was meant to alleviate. And Booth's system adds another layer of complexity, even if it is like technically historically accurate. In comes Luke Ranieri's innovation, and he did this with a friend of his. What was his name? I'm blanking on it. But he came up with this idea of a Lucian sort of elevated Koine pronunciation that is basically like that allows for a spectrum of like a certain variety, where you can either lean into to a version of it that's closer to Attic, that would have been what speakers in the Hellenistic period who were sort of very well educated would have used, or you could lean into something closer to the Byzantine pronunciation, and he gives you sort of parameters for how you can approach all of these different sounds and letter combinations. Very, very fascinating, very detailed, meticulous work that you should definitely go check out on the Polymathy channel. And like, this is his system, right? And it's not like he didn't invent it. He deduced it from the available evidence. Neo Prototype was mentioning, oh yeah, posh Hellenistic. Very good. Yes. Posh Hellenistic, James mentioned, and it makes no difference to pronunciation, but affects accentuation. So yeah, so the menu of the buffet of pronunciation systems that's available to somebody who is entering the field, somebody who's decided like, I want to learn Greek. This is the first thing they need to tackle, right? Like, this is like when they're presented with modern Greek, you realize that, oh boy, you get all of these letter combinations that make the sound E, right? Iota, upsilon, right? Epsilon. The combination epsilon iota, the combination omicron iota, the combination epsilon iota, upsilon iota. They all say E. So on the one hand, it makes it easy to it makes it easy to speak, because it's just like you just got one sound you need to worry about. But backing into the spelling from hearing something is very difficult, right? And then also the combination alpha iota is the same as epsilon, so it just says E. And then omicron and omega probably merged at some point in the Hellenistic period, and we can't distinguish the difference between them. So when somebody, and this is the sort of really, this is my go-to example, right? So afti I kali versus afti I kali. Any Greek person will tell you, yeah, this is confusing, right? It is either those good males, right? Male plural. So afti kali means like those, this is in modern Greek phrasing, like those good people. Afti kali anthropy. If you ask a person if you ask a Greek person, what does afti kali mean? They'll be like, well, it depends on how it's spelled, right? That it's ambiguous. We don't know. Like if you just hear someone say afti kali, it could be the good woman, afti kali hineka, someone a feminine object or person, versus those good people, afti kali. Now, a proponent of like Erasmian pronunciation would say, oh, okay, well, we can resolve that by just saying autoi hoi kaloi, right? Then you're saying oi, oi, oi versus aute he kale. So yes, that's probably like there was a point in time in the Greek language among native Greek speakers that this ambiguity did not exist, right? If I could turn back time, I would love to live in a world where these did not sound the same. I have to be honest. It would be amazing. And that world exists in academia, right? They've recreated this world. And so that's just not the world that I live in, because I live in the real world where I can go to Greece and get tripped up by this. So is it a great thing? Is it like a major strength of the language that you literally can't hear the difference between these two things unless you see it spelled, or unless you have an object that it modifies to give you the context, right? Afti kalianthropy, if I were to say that, like those good people, I would immediately know what it means, right? Like then all of a sudden the ambiguity becomes resolved in my mind when I hear what it's modifying: people, autoi hoi kaloi anthropoi, right? Like if I were saying it that way, I wouldn't need the people at the end to know what it refers to. But in the same thing with afti kali hineka. Once I hear hineka, ambiguity is resolved, right? I just need that little piece of the puzzle to figure out what's going on, right? Again, ask a Greek person, what does afti ine kali mean? Afti ine kali. So they are good, or does it mean she is good? The top one means they are good. The bottom one means she is good. So some people would say this is a problem, right? I understand, I completely sympathize with somebody who comes into this. Like, let's say you sign up for Duolingo. Please sign up for Duolingo. Use the promo code CrossBible10, get 10% off Duolingo. That's my official plug. They're great. And they will present you with options when you start up your Greek learning program, which is awesome. It's a great platform. You should use it. And they will let you choose between like 3 different kinds of pronunciation, right? Erasmian, and they have a reader that does all the audio that uses like a American Erasmian, and what I think they call like high Koine or something, like the pronunciation that the Polis Institute uses, that I think Kevin Grasso, who started Biblingo, uses. And then and they have a native speaker of modern Greek who reads everything in modern Greek, and they present you with the modern Greek system, and they give you a menu, and they explain to you the differences very, very briefly, so you can make a choice at the beginning which path you're going to choose. And I think they give a pretty fair representation of the sort of pros and cons of each, but they do say that they do declare in that section that modern Greek is difficult. Like this is I think they say, like, it's if I recall, it says like this is the most difficult variety of pronunciation to master. So be fairly warned if that's what you take on. And again, yeah. So afta ikala, right? Those or good. Yeah. So it can be confusing, right? Like these homonyms are found in all languages. Yes, we have homonyms in our language. We could say, what does run mean? Does it mean you're like running down the street, or does it mean like the water's running? Bear. What does bear mean, right? Like if I ask you what does bear mean, it really depends on how it's spelled, right? Is it B-E-A-R or is it B-A-R-E? It's not like we don't suffer from the same problem. It's just that in Greek, you're dealing with this like on every page, right? You're dealing with this on like every other sentence is going to be, have this challenge, and you just have to work through it, right? And if you're applying it to ancient Greek, it's going to be, afti kalisin, I guess. Sorry, this is bad polytonic here. I need to have afti. Yeah, afti kali. Sorry, afti. So is it afti kali isin or afti? Oh, Jesus, what are we even doing? All right, so boom. Sorry. Now look, this isn't really okay. So if this were biblical Greek, you would be saying, okay, autoi kaloi is esin. So it's they are good, or aute kale estin, right? Or she is good. Now for me, this is just afti kalisin versus afti kaliestin. They're all e's, right? So you really don't, you need that final verb isin, they are, it's enclitic, or estin, so he, she, or it is, right? So she is versus they are. If you get that word at the end, it resolves the ambiguity. But if you don't have the word at the end, you're out of luck. And of course, the most famous example, the biggest obstacle that people cite, is the difference between imis versus imis. Now, here, you basically have either he mes, right? Like he mes, where you have the he at the beginning, the ita with the rough breathing, or it's the u upsilon, right? The E, ypsilon, humes. So these are very confusing, and this is the barrier to entry. This is really what most people cite as the reason, the straw that broke the camel's back, as to like why they won't touch modern Greek, why they won't go near it, why they won't learn it, why they won't use the why they won't use the pronunciation. Knowing the difference between bare hands and bare hands can save your life. Exactly. And then we have howdy. All right. So this is my Greek student. So I'm late, got distracted tracing my family lineage, but I'm happy to hear you don't besmirch Duolingo, because that's how I got started with Greek before you started teaching me, Stephen. Thank you. So yeah, Duolingo, if you learn with Duolingo, there are so many resources available for learning modern Greek, and they're all going to be using modern Greek pronunciation. And most AI, like one thing I realized is that dubbing that interview over using AI is that the AI is also going to interpret Greek using modern Greek pronunciation, right? So there's just too much stuff. There's so much stuff out there that's already using that pronunciation system. It's very, very common. So the reason why these personal pronouns, we, emis, and you, humes, right, emis, they sound exactly the same in modern Greek pronunciation, or in, let's say, late Hellenistic Byzantine pronunciation. When at some point in that late, like by the, this phenomenon, especially the transition from humes, right, like the you, to emis, was already happening in the 2nd century BC in Egypt. We have documentation of that, right? So this was a very gradual process where these words ended up becoming so similar that when people confuse them, and then we ended up in modern Greek with hemes turning into emis. So now the Greeks just say emis with an e, like they have a new pronoun for we, emis, and then emis has become like esis. So that now they have like emis, esis, ambiguity resolved. For example, in modern Greek, they have a saying we imin, me ita, right? Woe unto us, not woe unto you. When they say it, they have to specify that what they mean is imin is us, right? Now, this also trips you up when you get to the Bible, right? And we have examples of it, for example, in Galatians 4:28. So, and you, brothers and sisters, like Isaac, are children of the promise. Now, this gets a B rating in the critical text in the NA28, because there are a lot of manuscripts that say, and we, brothers and sisters, like Isaac, are children of the promise, right? It makes sense for Paul to say, we are the children of the promise, like he and his audience, right? Inclusively. And that, so there are textual variants that in this verse substitute emis with emis. And if you speak modern Greek, or you use modern Greek pronunciation for ancient Greek, this becomes extremely understandable, right? You realize, like, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. Either like, like whatever Paul originally wrote, if he meant, you or we, someone down the line changed that, because either a lot of the times, there are instances where a scribe may be copying because they're hearing someone read a codex or whatever, read out loud the text, and then they're writing it down. And if you heard this spoken, you would assume that este would give you enough context, you are, to say like, okay, this is you, this isn't we. But it's easy to mix up. Now, Hebrews 9:14 is another animal, because here we actually have, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Here we get a C rating in the NA28 with imon. So is it your conscience, or is it our conscience? Cleanse our conscience. Like, there are enough manuscript variants to say that it might not need to be hey mon, right? Imon. It might be imon with the upsilon, right? Like that's a textual variant. 1 Corinthians 4:8-11 is probably the strongest example of how this confusion really, really like stumps people. Because here you have to read through, you have to really highlight, I bolded here a lot of these endings to determine whether or not Paul is talking about you or us, right? Already you are satisfied. Already you are rich. Here we have este, right? Eplutisate. This ate, the te ending is telling you he's talking to you guys, right? And then you have become kings without us. So horisimon, without us, evasilefsate. So you have become kings without us. It doesn't really make sense to say without you. But hey, guess what? When you look at biblical manuscripts, you're going to get textual variants that say without you, you have become kings. That doesn't make any sense, right? So from a text critical perspective, when you're looking at all these manuscripts, some of them say you, some of them say we. Here we know it's got to be you, right? Just because we have the additional context of those verbs to help us out. And that's why if you're using modern Greek pronunciation, most of the time you don't get stumped by this stuff because you do have those verbal endings to sort of guide you into which pronoun it is, even though I say imon regardless, right? Keophelonye evasilefsate, inakeimis imin simvasilefsomen. So this is an interesting one because indeed, I wish you had become kings, right? Evasilefsate, and here we have the verbal ending to guide us, so that we also might reign with you. So here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say so that you might also reign with you. So that's why we know, even though the textual variants are all over the map and we have emis popping in by scribes, again, these are scribes in the Byzantine period who are copying the Bible, who spoke Greek the way that modern Greeks speak it, right? So they're confusing these two words. These two words are probably they're interchangeable in their pronunciation. When you get to verse 9, for I think God has exhibited us apostles last of all, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to say you apostles last of all, as men condemned to die, right? So here is probably saying us, but again, in the pronunciation of the Byzantine period that the scribes were using, they sounded the same. Otitheatron egenithimen tokosmo, right? You have become a spectacle, a theater, or we have become a spectacle to both angels and to people. And here we get this whopper. We are fools for Christ, but you are wise in Christ. We are weak, but you are strong. You are distinguished. We are dishonored. To the present hour, we are hungry and thirsty, poorly clothed, brutally treated, and without a roof over our heads. We get a lot of variation here because of this sort of like it's we, you, we, right? Imis mori dia Christon, right? We are fools for Christ. Imis de phronimi en Christo, but you are wise in Christ. Imis asthenis, right? We are weak. Imis de ischiri, imis endoxi, imis de atimi. So like if you're a modern Greek speaker and you're like just hearing this being like read from the pulpit, like you're pretty lost. Like this is, you need to see it, like you need that printed text in front of you to really work through this. Now, I would, I imagine that there are certain people who would watch this who would say, well, there you go. Like, I'm not signing up for this. Like, this is too much. This is like confusing. Why would I do that? What I want is hemes moroi dia Christon, right? Humes, hemes. They want the who and the he to be in the front of that pronoun to distinguish between you and us, or you and we. I get that, but that's really not like a super clear distinction if you're reading this fluently and quickly anyway. But if you were to hear, Father Evangelos, if you give him this text and read it, he's just going to blow through it. He's going to say, imis de phronimi en Christo, imis asthenis, imis de ischiri, imis endoxi, and so, and endoxi, sorry. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Like, this is something that I just have to, grant a point to the other side. It's gonna be challenging in any case scenario, and you need the context. You need to sort of work through the examples to say, okay, this example is unambiguous because the word order, the word order is ambiguous, but it can mean so that you could reign with us because imis simvasilefsomen, But then ina que mi simin is nonsensical, right? Like, so that we could for us. So there are instances where if you go through these examples, you can see that, like, okay, this is unambiguous. This is unambiguous. You have enough context to piece together what it is, but you have to do that additional work. And you can't, there are examples here that are ambiguous, that from a text critical perspective, we actually don't know for certain if Paul is referring to you or we in specific instances. Like, the original text could have said anything, and the later scribes could have mucked it up, because this is what happened with the pronunciation of the language. In 2 Corinthians 3:2, you are our letter written in our hearts, right? Is it our hearts? Is it your hearts? Known and read by all people. We got two textual variants here. The textual variant has the best support in the critical text that's cited is hey mon, right? Imon, it's ours. It gets the A rating, but like, hey, Imon is in Sinaiticus, right? And Sinaiticus is an important manuscript. We just sort of looking in this context, we do not believe that Paul said, you are our letter written in your hearts, right? Like, it seems like the letter's written in our hearts. He's speaking collectively, right? So that is a sort of long detour on the topic of pronunciation to kind of give us some context into what's going on in the current state of the field. The declensions don't help out determining in modern Greek. The declensions help. Yeah, the declensions definitely help. And again, look, if you. This was a resource that I got very early on. It's a reading of the critical text of the New Testament by Spiros Zotiadis, who has passed away, and it says using modern Greek pronunciation. So Spiros Zotiadis, I don't really usually recommend this as a resource. I listened to it early on. He is a native speaker of Greece. I think he's from Cyprus. And I think he spent so much time in the United States that he really ended up sort of developing a little bit of an accent. His pronunciation is very interesting to listen to, but it's not one that I would emulate. There's the Bible read by Father Raphael. I'll drop that in the description. That's one that I think is very much worth listening to. Over, like, that should be the default read Bible that people should listen to if they're interested in adjusting their ear to the sort of sound of modern Greek pronunciation. Now, before let's go back and listen to one more Father Evangelos example here.
Troparion that again prepares us and shows us the path that man must follow spiritually during Holy Week in order to experience the Passion and then the Resurrection. And it's a very important hymn. It says the following. Ερχόμενος ο Κύριος προς το εκούσιον πάθος, της Αποστόλης έλεγε εν τη οδό, «Ιδού αναβαίνομεν εις Ιεροσόλυμα και παραδοθήσετε ο Υιός του ανθρώπου, καθώς γέγραπτε περί αυτού». He had informed his disciples that this would happen. Δε φταίουν και εμείς και καθαρμένες διανοίες, with a pure spirit from exercise, from fasting, from prayer, συμπορευθόμεν αυτό και συσταυρωθόμεν και νεκρωθόμεν δι' αυτόν τες του βίου ειδονές. Ήνα και συζήσομεν αυτό και ακούσομεν βοώντος αυτού ουκέτι εις την επίγειον Ιερουσαλήμ δια το παθήν, αλλά ανεβαίνω προς τον πατέρα μου και πατέρα ημών και Θεόν μου και Θεόν ημών και συνανυψώ ημάς εις την άνω Ιερουσαλήμ, εις την βασιλεία των ουρανών. What then is the purpose of Christ's passion for every one of us? What should we do? As he was lifted up on the cross, we are to be lifted up into heaven spiritually, into the kingdom of heaven, to become citizens of the kingdom of heaven that we lost at the fall. This thing is the spirit of Holy Week and of the services, and that's why the hymnography is so rich, expressed in a poetic and musically pleasing way, so that through it we might truly enter into the experience. As the hymn says, "Συμπορευόμεν αυτόν," let us walk with Christ, και να συσταυρωθούμε, και να νεκρωθούμε, let us die in regard to earthly pleasures.
Yeah. So you could see there the explanation is pretty clear, right? He's making the claim that the text in the original, when it is recited in this way, is pleasing to the ear. It's poetic. It is, it has this euphony that presumably a translation in modern Greek so that everybody would understand every word would not have that, right? It just wouldn't have the same acoustical effect. It wouldn't have the same spiritual impact. And this is what he is claiming about the particular, like about the original language itself. And again, if you are studying it this way, you're giving yourself access to the original, even though, yes, there's like a certain burden you have to take on. I do understand the logic here. I do understand why it is, why they put a burden on themselves to preserve the tradition. And I also understand why people are sort of like hesitant to adopt this, this approach that I advocate for, which is like learning modern Greek as a stepping stone into ancient Greek. Now, a couple of other resources. First of all, Benjamin Cantor's book, A Short Guide to the Pronunciation of the New Testament Greek, and also his bigger volume, The Pronunciation of New Testament Greek. These resources, I mean, they're very interesting. They're super, like, it's super in depth. The conclusion that he really comes to, though, is that, like, if you're really trying to target the pronunciation of biblical Greek, of like what what the Bible would have sounded like when it was like first hot off the press, right? Like, and read in these churches, when somebody received a letter of Paul and they read it out loud in Corinth, what did it sound like, right? And the conclusion is basically it sounded a lot like modern Greek, right? With the exception of some of these vowels, that are ambiguous now, they were disambiguated then. He recommends a sort of reconstructed system that's just a lot closer to modern Greek and sounds a lot better to my ears, right? And Benjamin Cantor also is a pretty good imitator of modern Greek pronunciation, even though he doesn't use it habitually. He did a whole speech in Greece, in ancient Greek, using modern Greek pronunciation. I mean, it was sounded very natural. It was almost like, in my personal opinion, his voice when he did his modern Greek speech, I'll have to link that in the description too, sounded better than all of the audio Bibles he's ever recorded, right? In my opinion, like, I've listened to all of them, and it's just like, I feel like whenever he's using his system that he advocates for, there's a certain sort of effort behind each syllable to get it right, because you're being really surgical about all, the precision. Whereas when he's just doing it in modern Greek pronunciation, he's, I guess, using native speakers as an example of like what he should be following, which is what we tend to do when we learn a foreign language, as a living language. And man, it sounds great. Like, he sounds awesome in that environment. So I guess, okay, so we're interested in Lucian of Samosata, right? A Syrian rhetorician from the 2nd century AD, who is the sort of model for that pronunciation system. That would be basically somebody in the Hellenistic period who was living in the time when the pronunciation was undergoing this rapid change, but where presumably because he was a higher class speaker, he would have preserved more conservative pronunciation than most people around him. He would have been basically like kind of the ancient equivalent of like a grammar Nazi, like one of those people who, you come across them. Luke's one of them, by the way, who pronounces where and who, like they pronounce WH with an aspiration, specifically to enunciate, right? So yeah, he was trying to sound more Attic. This is the second sophistic, right? These are people who are writing, they're emulating the Attic dialect when they write, and they probably emulate the Attic dialect in their speech. Yeah, a satirist. So that's what Mandy wanted me to mention, that he's a satirist. Yes, so he's a satirist, and so the idea is that, yeah, if you could go back and meet this guy, he probably was one of those people that was like, ew, the unwashed common masses are like ruining my language. and the young people are just like, oh, that this future generation is lost, and we need, linguistically conservative people. A couple of other books I wanted to feature. Constantine Campbell's Advances in the Study of Greek. A very informative book about some of the breakthroughs that happened recently in the sort of study of Greek academically. And then Greek Pedagogy in Crisis by David Miller. That documents a lot of the, this sort of like positive, negative about the current state of Greek scholarship. I personally, when getting into this, was faced with this challenge. Like I said, I started with this, moved on to a whole bunch of material that I realized was going to have a lot of value for me. In particular, by the way, a modern Greek Bible, right? This is, I'm very proud to announce that I have finally, after a year of going back and forth with the Hellenic Bible Society, Cross Bible now has a license to today's Greek version. It's the translation in this beautiful Bible, a modern Greek version of the Bible that you can put side by side with the ancient Greek to sort of track along, which really for me had this was a huge benefit early on, a huge perk of learning modern Greek, is being able to hold a modern Greek Bible side by side with an ancient Greek Bible, right? And I can do this also in, by the way, hold on a second, let me make sure I got the right browser window open. Cross Bible. Going to sign into Cross Bible, and I'm going to show you guys. It's not this particular Bible version isn't there yet, but it will be. Hold on one second. So if you are logged into Cross Bible, you can pull up. First of all, you can pull up an English Bible, and you can pull up next to it the original Greek, right? You can pull up the SBL Greek New Testament. You can compare these versions side by side. Hold on a second. Why am I not getting these two versions? Okay. Sorry, I'm in Genesis. Let me get into Mark. So the SBL Greek New Testament, boom. Okay, so I'm comparing the English to the Greek here. Well, one thing I can also do, and let me switch this around. Let me select the SBL here. And one thing I can do that, again, this isn't an accessible resource if you don't know modern Greek, but if you do, you can pull up Spiros Philos. This is one very popular modern Greek Bible that I have, and you can compare the original Greek to the modern paraphrase, right? Where it's using a lot of the same words, but the grammar is different. This really anchors you in the Greek in a way that just like comparing the, like if you're comparing Greek to English and you're saying, okay, this was translated into this, the syntax is going to be different. There's going to be things that are like, obviously if you're an English speaker, this is what you need to start with. But if you get yourself to the point of learning modern Greek, you also can compare the Greek text to Vamvas. And here it would probably be more appropriate to compare the Textus Receptus to Vamvas, because Vamvas is a translation of the Textus Receptus. But boy, Vamvas is so conservative. He's really translating in Katharevousa. You can see that he is really sticking, like if you go through this word by word, he's sticking very close to the original Greek. And again, I can pull up my Bible study tools, and I can go in here and I can take a note, and I can say, Vamvas is linguistically conservative, and I can save it on that verse and come back to it. Let's see, they're going to refresh. So now that note is preserved in all of my sessions. So there are my notes. Boom. Vamvas is linguistically conservative. This is saved to Mark 1:6. So if you sign up for Cross Bible for $5 a month, you can start taking notes. You can start adding bookmarks to the verse. You can tag the bookmarks with your own categories. It's very, very, we're really pushing out a lot of developments on this site. So this is the official plug. Go register on crossbible.com for free. Make sure you sign in when you're using it, so you have access to the customization features, even if you're just using the free version. And please consider upgrading to the paid version. getting on the Discord, the link in the description to the Discord will let you start adding notes to your Bibles, and bookmarking verses that you want to come back to, categorizing those bookmarks, color coding those bookmarks. We're going to be releasing a highlighting feature soon. And so for $5 a month, you can get early access to these features that we're just now rolling out, and then jump into Discord and give us feedback and help us improve the product. There aren't any other Bible study platforms that will let you do that, where you can just message the creator of that software or that website directly and say, hey, can you fix this, or could you improve this? And they'll actually take your feedback and incorporate it into their product pipeline. So we are actively building the next generation of Bible study software. Please get on board with this, sign up. It's, right now the basic plan is $5 a month. We have a $10 tier, $20 tier. We're going to start rolling out really powerful Bible study features that will allow you to customize your Bible study experience. And like I said, we have 2 modern Greek versions right now that you can really anchor yourself in Greek, right? Or like you can get English out of the picture, right? Like start the thing about modern Greek, the reason why it's such a useful tool is it really is just in a nutshell, it is a simplified form of ancient Greek, right? This is my pitch. This is the analogy that starting with modern Greek is like learning how to drive on an automatic transmission, right? Like if you're not worried about when you got to hit the clutch, when you got to shift gears, and you're just paying attention to the road, and you're, like following, you're stopping at the stop signs and doing what you need to do to avoid getting into an accident, you're going to learn how to drive a lot easier. That's the analogy. Or you're going to get into the shallow end of the pool and you're going to learn how to swim before you dive into the deep end, right? Ancient Greek is the deep end of the pool, and modern Greek is the shallow end. Modern Greek is the easier way to approach it. So if you get a diglot edition of the Bible, either by accessing it on Cross Bible, and we're going to have today's Greek version soon, which is a very nice translation, you'll be able to compare the side-by-side today's Greek version with Spiros Philos and with Vamvas, right? Like I'm going to have all of these modern Greek versions available. You can also get, let's see. So Trebelas is another diglot edition of the Bible where you have modern Greek on one side and ancient Greek on another side. I have several of these, very useful tools. Unfortunately, Trebelas produced versions in both Katharevousa, like very carefully following along the Greek without too much modernization. And he did another version in Demotiki and Demotic Greek that's a bit closer to standard modern Greek. Those are also available in these diglot print editions. That, like, again, if you're not on this, if you're not on the train, if you're not like learning modern Greek, then you're missing out on, you don't get access to these amazing resources. I am trying to get Trebelas on Cross Bible. The person who controls the rights to that, the organization that controls the rights to that, are reluctant to let their Bible be featured on the platform. But I'm working on it. And I want to explain that, like, when I first started this language learning journey, right, which is like, it's a spiritual journey, but it's also just a linguistic journey, because I've been learning languages my whole life. I started when I was 14 with Russian, and then I learned Spanish, and then I dabbled in French and Old Church Slavonic, and then eventually I arrived at my most recent language project, which is Greek. It was just nonsensical for me to approach a foreign language without the same tool set that I would have in any other living language, right? So for me, I always need to have the 4, I call them quadrants because there's 4. Some people call them the 4 strands, which is reading and writing on one hand, which is very important. And generally the goal for most people studying the Bible or studying ancient literature, ancient Greek, is the reading part. That's really all they care about. Writing, maybe they do a little exercise, but those are they're on one half of the quadrant. Then we have listening and speaking, which is what most people just tend to ignore, right? Like they just don't include that in the repertoire. They focus on the narrow quadrant of reading. They may do, like composing is a rarity, and then listening and speaking are just like, it's the secondary. there is a new wave, right? There's a new trend now of people getting into these communities and online, like I think Biblingo offers this, of people getting into classes where they use reconstructed ancient Greek communicatively, right? I don't offer that, right? So when I have a Friday session, I think Neo Prototype is going to message me about jumping into the Friday session. I have a beginner session where we Greek out every Friday morning with my students, and we mainly use modern Greek as a communicative vehicle for talking to each other, right? And like learning how to communicate in Greek. But we always make sure that when we approach the modern Greek language, that we are cognizant of the fact that modern Greek exists in this spectrum between ancient Greek and modern Greek, which again is the Greek language question, right? It is language and national identity in Greek in Greece. I can illustrate some examples of this, where basically what you have to keep in mind is that modern Greek is basically under the burden of the legacy of its ancestral language, right? It is a language that is in conflict with itself. And in some sense, that can help us. In some sense, that can hurt us when we're trying to master the language. Because if I'm learning Russian, I may look up a word to find the definition. And because Russian is a super standardized language, I'm not going to run into issues of like, there being 2 or 3 different ways to say the same thing, right? It's just going to be like, this is how you say it. And when you study Greek, you're going to very quickly encounter something that, this is something that my students know very well because we really focus on this. Just right out the gate, if you're just learning how to count in Greek, learning modern Greek, you have to constantly be faced with the option of the learned variety of the language having influence on daily life, right? On like this is not something that we as English speakers can really conceptualize very well, because with the exception of like archaic words like whom that creep into our language, that like, okay, there are people that say whom, we do get these sort of like, like in communities that use the King James Bible, maybe they talk with like these and thous and things like that. But for the most part, we don't exist in a world where like Old English exudes influence on the way we speak, right? Like there's a difference between the spoken variety of the language and the literary variety of the language, but the distance isn't very far. In Greek, it's an enormous distance. And even as something as simple as the numbers, you can see that like in this example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And in one, we do have some difference. Like if you're saying one thing is feminine, in ancient Greek, it would be hes, right? Is. And in modern Greek, it's enas. Okay, so we have a little difference. Mia is the same, like one woman. There's also mia in modern Greek. And then hen, right? N has become ena. So right out the gate, when you're just counting, you use the neuter forms. You say ena. Ena, dio, or dio in modern Greek. There's another variety. Tria, right? Or tris. And again, we have both of these. Tris, tesares versus tesseris, right? So different spelling, basically the same thing. Tessera. Tessera in modern Greek, tessara in ancient Greek. Nobody's going to say tessara, right? Nobody's going to spell that number with tessara in modern Greek. They're always going to say tessera with epsilon. So there's been a slight change, right? Then you get the pente, which they pronounce pende. Then you get the hex, x, which they pronounce exi. They added a vowel. But then you get to 7, 8, 9, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? So in ancient Greek, they would say epta, okto, enea. And in modern Greek, they also say epta, okto, enea, because those are like the traditional forms. Like those forms have never died out. They're totally normal. You'll hear like kids saying it. You'll find it in children's books. But then you get the shift, a systematic sound change where the combination pata has turned into fta in modern Greek, and kta has turned into khta in modern Greek, and ea endings of nouns have turned into ya endings with one syllable, going from ea, 2 syllables to 1 syllable. And then theka is just theka, but as somebody mentioned, the delta, it is visually and phonetically similar, at least in modern Greek, to the Old English the, right? The. And I've often wondered about the potential connection or the coincidence. I think it's just, yeah, it shifted from de to the, and then the t shifted to th. So I use Mycenaean quattro, quattor instead of Tesares. So, so here you, right when you start learning modern Greek, you automatically, right out the gate, have to become aware of these competing forms, and you will continually experience competing forms when you're learning the language. You can't. It's unavoidable. So when I teach Greek, I teach people to say epta, octo, enea, 7, 8, 9. Those are generally the forms that I prefer to drill. But I'm also kind of very hyper aware of the fact that you're gonna encounter efta, octo, and ya in modern Greek circles, and that's going to be your, those are the demotic forms. But you have to be aware that there's like a formality spectrum, and epta, octo, and nea, the ancient Greek forms, are not particularly formal in modern Greek. They're pretty normal. But then when you get to the ordinal numbers, right, like the cardinal numbers, ordinal numbers, protos, defteros, tritos, tetartos, pemptos, ektos, evdomos, ogdos, enatos, dekatos, and then endekatos, right? First through 10th and then 11th. Once you hit 11th, you do have a variant spelling where the endekatos can turn into endekatos with the nt. So there is a sort of a reformed spelling of modern Greek where words like andras, where that's man in modern Greek, anir in ancient Greek, is spelled nt in the standard spelling, the new standard of modern Greek, where the d sound is represented by nt, it's rather than the delta the sound. So you get that happening. However, this is something, and I'm gonna illustrate an example of me making a mistake here to show you guys something that is interesting. So let's pull this down. I just want to use a teachable moment of something that threw me off. And you can hear it in the intro that I recorded. Here we go. Boom. All right. So if you watch the trailer that I recorded, so I did my own voiceover audio and I was reading from a script, but I messed something up, and I want to use my own mistake as a teachable example.
Και ανυπομονώ να
So
Γεια σε όλους, είμαι ο Στέφανος Νέλσον από την Cross Bible και ανυπομονώ να μοιραστώ μαζί σας μια εμπειρία που έζησα τον Απρίλιο ταξιδεύοντας στην Ελλάδα. Μεγάλη εβδομάδα στην Αθήνα. Γιορτάζεται σε μια από τις παλαιότερες βυζαντινές εκκλησίες της πόλης, την Καπνικαρέα. Ένας ναός του 11ου αιώνα.
Ένας ναός του 11ου αιώνα. That's what I said. Now, if there's any Greek people watching, I don't think we have any Greeks. If there are any Greeks in the live chat, please say hi. So this isn't too embarrassing yet, but they might watch it later and kind of get a laugh out of this. So I had in my script the numbers 1, 1, and then Omicron Epsilon for endekatu, to endekatu eona. So in a brief primer, like there in these numbers, in these ordinal numbers, you have basically the modern Greek forms have been updated so that the accents are persistent. So the second day in Greek is I defteri imera, the second day, right? Now that actually breaks a rule in ancient Greek, which is like the 3-syllable rule that says, like, if the accent has to fall on one of the last 3 syllables, and if the last vowel is long, the accent shifts because that vowel has, I like to say, it has gravity, right? And it takes that accent and it pulls it towards it. So I defteri imera, the second day, traditionally would have been pronounced I deftera imera, right? I deftera imera, because the alpha is long and it pulls the accent over to it. Whereas in modern Greek, defteri, technically that ita at the end shouldn't, that should pull the accent away. Like you can't have the accent on defteri. in ancient Greek. Like that would be anathema, right? It would just be incorrect for the word second in the feminine. But in the reason it doesn't work in modern Greek as well is that Deftera is the second day of the week on the calendar. So as Father Evangelos explained, Kyriaki is Sunday, is the Lord's Day. They count that as day number 1 in Greece. So the second day is Monday, is Deftera. So it's not that like ancient Greek transitioned into modern Greek and the form Deftera disappeared. It's just that Deftera now means Monday. Whereas if you want to say that something is the second in the feminine, you would say Defteri. Now you could say Defteri, but it's like if you pick up a book that's written in Katharevousa, or if you look at like Van Vas, the Greek translation of the Bible that's in Katharevousa, very conservative Greek speakers will prefer Deftera still. They will basically just reject Defteri as like, oh, that's just like colloquial modern Greek. We prefer, this was the case up until the linguistic reform in the 1980s, where Deftera was normative, but people would just say Defteri. Now, in my script, I had it written like in that second line, a temple of the 11th century. Enas naos tu endekatu eona. That's really what I meant to say, or I would have said. I read it very quickly. But what I ended up saying was enas naos tu endekatu eona. And this may be like a subtle nuance that would sort of like, I think a Greek person listening their ears would perk up a little bit, because they would expect me to say enas naos, a temple, tu endekatu eona, right, of the 11th century. But what I said was enas naos tu endekatu eona. So in ancient Greek, it would have been is naos tu endekatu eonos, and eonas would be declined in the ancient Greek style as a third declension noun, eonos, which is very, it's pretty common for people to speak especially in a church context. You would say tu eonos, of the age. You wouldn't say tu eona, because eona is kind of informal, right? Like and again, when you're looking at the spectrum between ancient Greek and modern Greek tends to be the informal variety, where ancient Greek is the formal variety, right? So what I did was I mixed and matched, and I said, enas naos tu endekatu eona. Whereas like if I really wanted to be, if I was being this is just a subconscious like error on my part. If I wanted to be purposefully formal and use the sort of church Greek variety, I would have said enas naos tu endekatu eonos, but I said endekatu eona instead of endekatu eona. Now, this is like really like this kind of nuance is, I'm sure, lost on a lot of people who don't know what's going on, right? Like if you're just going to jump into studying ancient Greek, you're going to end up in a situation where, like, for example, let's just illustrate this on let's see, stop adding, add a different tab. So let's look at Wiktionary, for example, right? And this is just, it's good to know how to use this tool. So Wiktionary is a great resource. And if you come into like if you look up the term defteros, second, right, the number 2, and you see that it's a numeral, and you go down and you open up this conjugation table. If you are skipping modern Greek and you're going straight into Attic Greek, or you're gonna get like singular, dual, plural, right? If you're learning Koine, you're learning Biblical Greek, you're learning Hellenistic Greek, you're gonna maybe skip the dual, but you're gonna be met with a lot of consistency. You're gonna see that it's defteros in the masculine singular, it's deftera in the feminine singular, it's defteron in the neuter. That the accent is shifting because the alpha at the end is long. You can see it's marked with a macron. It's moving the accent over from defteros to deftera, right? This is normative. It's like you learn a rule and you just apply it everywhere, right? There are no exceptions to the rules. There are exceptions to some rules, but this rule is solid, right? That's the benefit you get if you just learn ancient Greek, right? That ancient Greek is super consistent. The rules apply very consistent. Like it's nice. It's like, it's comforting. You get in the plural, you see defteri, deftere, deftera, and then defteron, right? Again, it moves. This accent is moving because the vowel at the end is long and it's pulling the accent over to it. So you can get on board with this. This is like a very very user friendly, right? Like this is nice for beginners to learn. Now, what happens when you get into, if you scroll down on Wiktionary, you get into the modern Greek system. It's pushed below ancient Greek, and it's the exact same word, the exact same meaning. But then when you get into the conjugation table, you see this. Now, compare that. Like, think about where we started. We started in this table of Attic declension, and we were like, oh, okay, yeah, here's the pattern. It moves, the stress moves from here. We don't have multiple varieties of any of this stuff, right? They didn't have the language conflict in the Attic period, right? They had like basically the Attic dialect was enshrined. Like this is our, we have variants that might be in other dialects, but it's for the most part, if you're learning the Attic dialect or you're learning the descendant of it, which was the common Hellenistic dialect, we are in a world of consistency where we're happy. But then we get into modern Greek and like, what is going on here? And what's going on is that the language is in conflict with itself, right? When you learn, trying to get this centered, when you learn modern Greek, you have to sort of continually face this common issue where you have the form on top that is basically the new standard. This is standard modern Greek, defteri. But then you have the old form that's still kind of valid, deftera, right? Or in the genitive case, defteris versus tis defteras, right? So basically, like, if you want to learn modern Greek and you want to learn it well, you have to like learn ancient Greek too. It's a 2-for-1 special, right? You can't really effectively learn modern Greek well in isolation without at least becoming aware of these ancient Greek phenomena, right? You have to be straddling both. And so when somebody says like, oh, he only knows modern Greek, like, like I get a lot of criticism for like, oh, if he knows modern Greek, that means he doesn't know ancient Greek. Well, no, if you know modern Greek, you know it well, then you know how to apply ancient Greek in modern Greek effectively, even though, even like 10 years later, I say silly things like tu endekatu eona, and I mix up my modern Greek and my ancient Greek. It happens. Yes, you kind of scramble your brain a little bit, but there's still utility in it, right? Like it's still useful. And one thing that I encountered early on in my exploration was like, okay, I from my modern Greek, I jumped into Athenaze, right? That was like my entry point into Attic Greek. And I did an entire, I filled 2 notebooks like these binders with all of the material from Athenaze, and I did every single exercise in it, right? Like I really did Attic Greek. But I spent an entire year probably on Athenaze, and then I dabbled in modern Greek, and I did the same thing. I put together a binder for modern Greek. I did it all in polytonic script, and I did all the exercises from the workbooks and the textbooks in a textbook series that is really, really great. I thought I was going to show it on screen, but it's the textbook that I use with my students called Epikinonis Ellinika, so Communicating Greek. So what is form? Sorry, I'm not paying attention to the chat. Oh, I think you guys are talking to each other. So one kind of difficulty that I had is that I was in various forums and Facebook groups and trying to like find like-minded people who were also kind of teaching themselves, self-studying Greek, like autodidacts. And what I realized is that anytime I would, even though I was drawn to study modern Greek and ancient Greek together, I was constantly faced with people who were just kind of like very antagonistic, like almost to the point of being like racist, right? Like they're super anti-Greek, like don't go to Greece, don't like these people couldn't order a coffee or ask for directions in Greece if their life depended on it. And they were just like rabidly anti-modern Greek, right? So there's and some of them are kind of balanced, but if you go, there's a link in the description to the Be Greek forum, the Biblical Greek forum, where you can read, and this is like from this thread started in like 2011 or something like that. It was several years that people were writing back and forth, trying to answer the question of whether or not one should start with modern Greek, whether or not it's even worthwhile to learn it if your goal is to learn Biblical Greek. And it's a really fascinating read. For the most part, I think the 2 observations that I would make about that thread, that my takeaway is that, first of all, most of the people who are arguing that you shouldn't learn modern Greek, they don't know modern Greek anyway. Like they're not speaking from experience. They are repeating talking points. They are towing a line and repeating the mantra that they heard when they maybe first asked that question, because it's just sort of this like self-fulfilling prophecy that you shouldn't learn modern Greek. And even though in the last 10 years, I feel like that position has softened and that there are more people learning modern Greek, more people using the modern Greek pronunciation, more people opening themselves up to resources like the ones that I'm providing, like these interviews with the Greek Orthodox priest. I think the stigma has died down a little bit and it's not as controversial as it used to be, but it's still pretty controversial. So I recently posted this video, the Greek highlight reel that we were just watching, in a Facebook group. And someone, I'm not going to name names or dox anyone, but somebody asked the question, what pronunciation they use, or like, that, like, what pronunciation do they use? Well, and I explained, well, it's the Orthodox Church. They use modern Greek pronunciation. You wouldn't expect anything else. And then literally yesterday, I saw a question from somebody saying, I'm thinking about learning modern Greek. Is that like worthwhile? Should I try it? Like you always get this. You will get somebody who comes into one of these groups who's just started and they're faced with this challenge and they ask, like, should I learn modern Greek? And inevitably, I mean, you will always it's like clockwork. You will expect somebody, or actually you'll expect most people to say no. And they'll give reasons and maybe they'll be balanced or whatever. And I just want to share one comment that I saw, and this happened yesterday, right? Is I see a comment and I can't help, like, I can't help myself. I have to engage. It's so the question that was asked in this group was, is it useful to learn modern Greek? No, it is not. Boom. No, it is not under any circumstances. Already knowing modern Greek as a native speaker helps them with the older form of Greek that is biblical Greek. So note that if you already know it, if you're a native speaker, then it's good. It helps you. Or if you happen to have studied classical Greek, you will find the newer and more colloquial biblical form to be easy. But for anyone else, and that's me, right? You will find the newer and more colloquial biblical form to be easy. I'm sorry, for anyone else, learning modern because you want to learn biblical is like going from Los Angeles to San Francisco via Seattle. And this is just another version of the talking point that I hear all the time. The grammar of modern is not close enough to biblical to be anything but misleading. And if you're really interested in biblical Greek, then learn that without detours, right? Learn modern Greek for its own sake, but because you are interested in modern Greece and its culture, there are far more resources available for biblical Greek than there are for modern Greek. The last statement for me was just like, I mean, I got like a huge stack of resources I haven't even gotten to, that are available in modern Greek, right? Resources available for biblical Greek. So he means for in the English language for English language speakers, like who don't know modern Greek. So my question was, like, there are more resources available for biblical Greek than there are for modern Greek? Really? Like, have you ever been to Greece? They got bookstores. And also, why do you think already knowing a language as a native speaker does actually help, but presumably knowing it as a non-native speaker or learning it as a non-native speaker does not help? Like, I know modern Greek and I'm not native and it helps, right? And that, the person doubles down. Yes, like for people who are not in Greece, it's far easier to find textbooks for biblical or classical. And usually when people search for Greek on Amazon, they will get one of those too. You seem to be unaware that classical was what was usually taught from scratch, not modern. Or in some seminaries, they went straight to biblical because they were teaching people how to read the New Testament. So I guess I'm not aware of some things. The native speakers of modern, the native speaker of modern Greek has a fluent and full vocabulary. And so classical or biblical words will often remind him of modern descendants. But if they are unusual or vaguely related words, even if they're unusual or vaguely related, if the non-native speaker does not have this vocabulary to draw upon, the English speaker is more likely to think of classical words than that were borrowed into English. My response is just like, I have a large collection of books. I order them online. Not being in Greece isn't an issue anymore. And I don't know what you think I'm unaware of. Why do you think I'm so ignorant? I was being a little aggressive here. But the point I'm trying to make, oh, sorry, and I doxed that person. I'm going to have to edit that out. The point I'm trying to make is that, yeah, why is he so angry? Don't you dare learn modern Greek. That's basically like, that is a microcosm of the pushback that I encountered across the board very early on, simply asking like, hey, like, I find this really helpful. I'm doing this, like, I'm learning it. It's like, it's the pronunciation helps me, the vocabulary helps me, the grammar helps me. What's so bad about it? I don't understand. Like, what is up with all of this animosity and vitriol? Why is it so controversial? And you would, like, this is just, that person I was engaging with yesterday is exactly like every other person I've ever engaged with, like, over the past 10 years. They are all like that. They all have the exact same talking points. And the interesting thing is they make an exception for native speakers. So it's like, if you're a native speaker, oh, that's okay. But if you're not native, just don't touch it. Don't go to Greece, like, just ignore it. Just pretend that Greek died in like the 15th century, or like, pretend Greek died in like the 3rd century. Don't touch anything that's later than that. In my opinion, just robbing yourself from a lot of resources. Like, I was showing these Diaglot Bibles. You have these amazing, I have some great books in modern Greek. Dimitris Lipoulis, Glossikes Paratirisis, like linguistic observations. These are amazing books written in modern Greek about ancient Greek, or about like the Greek language question in Katharevousa. Για να μιλάμε και να γράφουμε σωστά τη γλώσσα μας. So like style guides for modern Greek that are very much like anchored in ancient Greek. You got anything by Yorgos Babiniotis, Lexiko των δυσκολίων και των λάθων στη χρήση της ελληνικής. So this is like a dictionary of mistakes and difficulties that people encounter with Greek. This is by Yorgos Babiniotis. And of course, an etymological dictionary. So this is like a dictionary where you will look up modern Greek words and then find the etymology and sort of dig down into the origin, right, of the ancient Greek roots. Let's see, this is the word sentencing dictionary diagrams, lexikoton paragogon και συνθέτων της Νέας Ελληνικής. So this literally just breaks down the derivations of words, like amazing resources that, like, if you don't know modern Greek, you just can't even access them, right? Hey, Travis, how you doing? Travis Barney, it's in the house. What's up? My Greek student. And then last but not least, we have the lexicon of New Greek. This is like one of the definitive, humongous modern Greek lexicons, where really, like, if you took a crack at, like, if you could delve into a lot of this vocabulary, you would get a lot of ancient Greek along the way. And to illustrate that, I actually have somewhere in here. Where do I have it? Oh, okay, here we go. Let me share a quick clip of a video that some of you may have seen. That is enlightening. Second. Okay, so the guy who wrote that that dictionary is someone named Yorgos Babiniotis. This dictionary right here with 150,000 lemmas. One of the largest modern Greek lexicons with 150,000 lemmas.
Και επειδή ρωτάνε συνήθως πόσες λέξεις είχε η αρχαία, ξέρουμε από το Little Scott Jones ότι είχε 125.000 σωζόμενες, μαρτυρούμενες λέξεις. Όμως ο Βιλαμόβιτς μας λέει ότι τα κείμενα τα οποία έχουν σωθεί είναι μόλις το 1/5 της αρχαίας γραμματείας. Επομένως, το ότι έχουμε αυτές τις 125.000 λέξεις είναι σε σχέση με τα κείμενα που έχουν σωθεί. Έχουμε ένα τεράστιο αριθμό λέξεων που έχει χαθεί διότι δεν κατεγράφει.
So what he's basically showing there, not a second, am I not appearing? Hold on, I don't see myself on the stage. Hold on. Okay, you guys see me picture in picture? let me share something else so I can try to restore myself on screen. What was I gonna shoot? Hold on a second. Okay, wait. Share my screen. Let me put something else up here. Add to stage, remove. Okay, boom. There we go. I'm back. So this lexicon, and basically like the thing about what he was describing is the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of words in Greek that have survived in the TLG database all the way from Homer up until modern Greek, right? And a lot of those words are preserved in the modern Greek lexicon that really can't be taken away from ancient Greek. Like if you think about it, you know, the word anthropos has never disappeared from the language, right? It's the same word. The word anir, so the word anthropos is person, and it's always been consistent throughout the entire history of Greek. But then anir means man. In modern Greek is andras. So the question is, like, if you're trying to distinguish between, you know, the different forms of the language, and you're going to say, like, okay, I understand that in a clinical sort of strictly linguistic classification, it is true that that modern Greek is a different language from ancient Greek, right? They are classified as different languages, even though you know, they could be considered from a practical perspective as different forms of the same language, right? Like they're just historical varieties of the language, like Middle English versus modern language. Okay, so one thing I want to boast about is that my you know, I don't know if I can call him a friend, but somebody that I really strongly admire, Luke Ranieri, who we talked about earlier, who is the author of the, you know, Lucian pronunciation system. He recently put out a video that I have in the description that I want to share because this is amazing to me. Luke has started studying modern Greek.
Shadowing the wonderful Alexander Arguelles technique, along with Lingopie's tools. And
Okay.
I just basically wanted to show what I do exactly, because I think it's useful if you already have Lingopie. This video is not sponsored by Lingopie.
So everybody should definitely make sure you're subscribed to Polymathy. Polymathy Plus is the channel that he put that on there. Luke and I have been interacting for quite some time, and we recently, you know, had a call, and we were discussing the sort of the topic that we've been talking about today: the utility of modern Greek or lack thereof. You know, what's the usefulness of it, and he really, you know, in our private correspondence, he and I went back and forth about sort of like, well, because one of the big things that he's been working on is just sort of like his pronunciation system, the material that he's been very, very focused on ancient Greek. However, he's always been an advocate of people opening themselves up to learning modern Greek. Like he's always been an ally, basically, of my cause. Even though he doesn't recommend using modern Greek from a practical perspective, he acknowledges that it's a legitimate practice and that that's no reason not to do it. But he also is very much in the camp of like classifying modern Greek as a separate language, mainly because he feels that the fact that modern Greek has no infinitive of the verb anymore, that it effectively that in and of itself classifies it as a different language, right? And that can be illustrated in this slide that I will present. Share screen. This is like the easiest way to explain it. The verb ime, right? In modern Greek, I am is ime, you are is ise, he, she, or it is ine. So I am, you are, he, she, you know, he, she, it is. And then they are is after ine, right? They are. Now in modern Greek, this was all the same. It was I am, imi, e, estin, like all of these were, sorry, all these were distinct, right? They are was distinct from he is, right? Whereas in modern Greek, avtos ine, avti ine, right? This has been simplified in modern Greek. And ine used to be the infinitive of the verb, right? Ine used to mean to be, and now it means is, right? To be would have to be paraphrased in modern Greek as na ine. So Luke has always sort of, emphasized the fact that because modern Greek no longer has the infinitive, it can't really be classed in this as the same language or a different form of the same language as ancient Greek. And the fact that he's now learning modern Greek, look, I'm not going to take credit for anything. Like, I think this is probably something he's been wanting to do for a really long time. He's always talked about it, that he recommends other people do it. He just didn't do it himself. He never truly got around to it. Now he's taken it on in earnest. But I just want to say, like, first of all, bravo, like, great job. I'm so glad he's doing it. But okay, so Neo Prototype says that he's been bullying Luke to redo his stuff in Attic Greek. He wants to drop the subscript iotas. Yeah, I mean, I think he's always recommended in his pronunciation system a range of options. So I guess he oscillates himself in his system. But basically, I had a conversation with him where I very aggressively argued for the position of, like, at least acknowledging that, hey, it's useful to learn modern Greek, right? And I got some pushback saying, well, but they're very different. There's no infinitive. Like, he and I had a very productive discussion about it. And shortly after that discussion, he starts learning modern Greek. I'm not taking credit. I'm not saying I pushed him over the edge or I influenced him in any way. I'm sure he's his own, he made his own decision there. But even if I planted a little seed in his mind that, that it's worthwhile for him to learn modern Greek, I'd like to think that I had some positive influence on that, because now, as you can see, he's documenting that journey. And I think it's only going to help him, because I watched that whole video very attentively. And I can see that there are things that I was surprised that he hadn't already picked up on, but because he had ignored modern Greek for so long, or at least not delved into it, that now really, like, my suspicion is that if he continues to the end of that road and becomes fluent, regardless of what he decides with his pronunciation, it's really a performance enhancing drug. It is going to put rocket boosters on his understanding of Greek that he already has, and it's going to propel him into the stratosphere, right? Like, it is going to really, really help his command of the language overall. And he has now opened himself up to the full historical spectrum, right? There are no more boundaries anymore. All Greek is open. All Greek is accessible. That is the goal. That is the sort of end goal. Again, I guess to finish off the list of resources, Greek and Essential Grammar. This is another, Mackridge has two grammars, right? So he has this grammar and this grammar. These are both very, very good. I think those are both available on the Cross Bible Study Resources page. Lots of, I have hoarded a lot of books that I order from Greece or that I bring home from Greece. Babiniotis has a contemporary school grammar of modern Greek. Again, the idea that, like, there are fewer resources available for modern Greek. I guess to steelman that argument, yes, there are, like, certain textbooks that are already in English for English speakers to learn biblical Greek. And if you were to dive into any of the resources that I have here that are in modern Greek for learning, this is like exercises in grammar and syntax of ancient Greek in modern Greek. These are, like, all of this is in modern Greek. The barrier to entry here is you have to know modern Greek in order to use these. These are resources that are for modern Greek speakers. So obviously, if you want to get started learning the Bible, if you want to get started learning biblical Greek or koine, you can't use these resources, right? So you would have to take a detour through modern Greek before you could really benefit from this, right? These are the textbooks I use in my Friday Greek class, and you can go on to crossbible.com, scroll to the bottom, send me a message if you're interested in Greek class. I know Neo Prototype is going to message me on Discord to claim his free Timeline of the Bible poster that he won last week, and hopefully jump into the Greek class. I use Epikinonistes Ellinika. It's a great series that comes with workbooks with lots of cool exercises. That it goes on to level 2 and a level 3. So this is just, you know, there are other ones that are good. But these workbooks are really killer. Like, you know, like I have a whole binder. I have lots of other material. Again, material in modern Greek for students of ancient Greek. Some of them are for learning modern Greek, and some of them are just for learning ancient Greek. This is all great stuff. I haven't even cracked open. So like this one, I haven't even cracked open. This is stuff that like when I go to Greece, I just hoard it and I bring it back in my suitcase. Neo-Nikiglossa. These are like for Greek school children, and also textbooks that the Greeks use to study ancient Greek in their school system using their system. It's pretty different from what we have. So a lot of them. Okay, here's another textbook series that's also very, very good for modern Greek. Between this one is very well illustrated and it's like in color. But the thing about these textbooks, this one, Ellinika Alpha, and then Epikinonistes Ellinika, one of the advantages that they have is that they're teaching you vocabulary and grammar and things that you can learn and like take out into the real world like right away, right? You can go to Greece and you can use this stuff. You can turn on a YouTube channel. You can turn on the Greek dub on a Netflix video or a Disney Plus cartoon. You know, you can watch Hercules, the Disney version in the original Greek, right? There are just like lots of tricks, and especially things like I have a huge collection of Greek children's books that I read to my child. That was like amazing experience that like if I didn't know modern Greek, I wouldn't be able to access any of those resources. So it is cross training me for ancient Greek. Like if I took a hiatus, which I did very frequently, I would take like a month or two and just back away from the biblical Greek for a while, like put my Bible down and then like focus on other reading material, other literature that's available in modern Greek. When I would pivot back into ancient Greek after a period of time of studying modern Greek, I would be better. Like it wouldn't be like as if I completely stopped studying Greek and I studied some other language and then I went back to Greek and I was super rusty. It's like they complement each other in ways that can really only be appreciated if you know the language. And let me give you one other piece of advice. So if you play chess, I don't know why I keep putting these headphones on. If you play chess, playing chess in Greek and reading textbooks about chess in Greek, this is by a famous Greek chess player. This is written in like very formal katharevousa. This is basically like more or less, there's a lot of parody in the way that this chess textbook is written with ancient Greek. It's pretty amazing that you can actually like the vocabulary of chess in terms of like horizontal, diagonal, like attacking, and like for example, the chess piece, the knight, is called the epos in modern Greek. Like epos means horse, right? The modern Greek term for horse is alogo, but they don't call it the alogo usually in chess. They call it epos, right? Pyrgos is the rook, it's the tower, right? So you actually, if you acquire chess vocabulary and you learn and you like watch chess tutorials and you learn to talk about chess in modern Greek, a lot of that vocabulary crosses over with ancient Greek. And then lastly, one more thing. So if you learn to read modern Greek literature, first of all, like there's so much modern Greek literature out there, like Kazantzakis, Seferis, Poemata, poems in Greek. The Greek literary tradition didn't just like die out in the Hellenistic period, right? Obviously, like the Byzantine period has a lot of literature, but if you cut off your Greek experience at a certain point in time, and you get yourself to where you no longer can access, like if you can't read Kazantzakis, you're missing out. You're missing out on like the sort of tail end, the most recent phase of the tradition. And I thought I had here somewhere Papadiamandis. There are certain Greek authors that were writing at the beginning of the 20th century, like Papadiamandis, who were writing in Katharevousa, who basically like are writing literature that is more or less, like Katharevousa is the sort of bridge between ancient Greek and modern Greek. That also gives you like a lot of really good experience to sort of broaden your horizon so that you're not narrowly focused in on a certain corpus of books like the New Testament and the Old Testament. That's great. Obviously, like there is an argument for like, okay, if that's all you're interested in reading, that's all you should read. You shouldn't read Plutarch. You shouldn't read Josephus. You shouldn't read I get that. And then you definitely shouldn't go as far out as to read Kazantzakis. But there's enough crossover to where you're really just sort of training, it's like kind of like, oh, I go to the gym to bench press. I don't exercise my core. I skip leg day, right? Like that analogy is pretty fair. I think when you're studying all different forms of Greek from all periods of time, you're really cross training and you're getting all of your core muscle groups, right? Like it is in the organism itself, the Greek language, it does have that breadth. And for me, there are no boundaries, and I don't recommend that anybody erect any boundaries over any kind of Greek. Homeric, classical, Hellenistic, Byzantine, modern, Katharevousa, Dimotiki. It's all good. It's all good. Neo-Prototype says, nah, take credit. Yeah, I'm not going to take credit for Luke's accomplishments. Let's see where he goes with this. I hope to be a guest on his channel someday and talk about it. They still publish Polytonic Greek today? Yes, they do. They do very much publish Polytonic Greek. And there are different varieties of Polytonic Greek, to be honest. There's the sort of traditional variety, which is going to be exactly like it is in your printed Bibles. But there are, this Greek Orthodox. Yeah, so this book right here, Themata Orthodoxis Ecclesiastikis Katechesis. So this catechetical sort of manual for Orthodox, catechumens. This is in Polytonic Greek, but it is in Reformed Polytonic Greek. So I can't really show you, but like, even though it does have all of the diacritical marks and all the accents and everything from Polytonic Greek, it doesn't have the grave accent. So that's what they skip in this particular variety. So it's like they want to maintain all of the diacritical marks, but it's only acute accents, circumflex accents, breathing marks, and I think iota subscripts. Actually, you know what? They skip iota subscripts. They don't have them here. Oh, no, sorry. They do have iota subscripts. So yeah, it's mainly just the grave accent and the different varieties. And actually, I think my books are like spread all over the floor right now. If you look at Mackridge's grammar of the Greek of modern Greek, he has an appendix where he goes over the different varieties of Polytonic script that were reformed in different periods. Link's horse in the Zelda game is named Epona. Yeah. So yeah, they do publish in Polytonic script today, and they publish in Katharevousa. So like you can still get books that are very recently printed, especially in ecclesiastical bookstores, that will just straight up like this stuff is written by a contemporary person in contemporary times in the closest thing to ancient Greek that you can get without just being full-blown ancient Greek, but it's infused with modern vocabulary, right? So that's what Katharevousa is. It's a modern Greek dressed up like ancient Greek. And it really helps. Like if you can read that, you can transition pretty easily into the Bible. So any last minute, I don't know if anybody, I'll have to go back through the chat to see if there were any votes for people who wanted a poster. But again, this is going to go out in the mail to Neo-Prototype as soon as he gives me his contact information, because he is the winner from last week's poster giveaway. Where is the package? Yeah. I will ship this out to you. So go ahead and if anybody wants a timeline poster, drop it in the chat. I intend on doing live streams every Saturday, and I will be giving away Timeline of the Bible posters. Thank you to the 6 people who have remained in the chat today. And if there are any, that nails the idea. If there are any last minute questions, last minute requests, I will take them now. Otherwise, please make sure you're subscribed. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. So this was an official celebration of being close to 2,000, but not quite hitting 2,000. Maybe next week we'll celebrate hitting 2,000. Share the channel with people. Ask them to make sure they subscribe. Any friends, any family, anybody who's interested in this sort of thing. Okay, yeah, dox yourself at some point on Discord, or just DM me. Thank you, Travis, for the congrats. Yeah, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Subscribe on register for free on crossbible.com. That will at least give you access to certain features like the customizations, and it will help us sort of make sure we're tracking like who's registering. Most of the people who use the site right now are anonymous. They don't actually register. So we're trying to get our registration numbers up. If you can, there are so many ways you can support us now. The two main ways are obviously subscribing on YouTube and watching our videos. Like if you haven't seen, if we have any video in the library on YouTube that you haven't seen yet, watch that whole thing from beginning to end. It really helps us to get our numbers up, to get the watch hours in, to build the YouTube channel. And like I said, share it on social media, get people to subscribe, get people to watch the videos. We're really close to hitting the 4,000 watch hour number. We actually exceeded 4,000 watch hours on the channel. How many do you need to get to 2,000? Good question. So right now, if you go to the studio, we have 1907. So we have 1,907 people. So we're just close to 100, less than 100. We'll get to 1,000. I'll get to 2,000. And then we are, I think, let's see. I'll announce right now that we have hit almost 2,500 watch hours in the last year. And so that's going to hopefully get up to 4,000. We have 4,000 watch hours, just not in the last year, because a lot of our content that we released last year has kind of the watch hours that we got on the original content, the initial videos that got a lot of traction. We have some videos that were pretty popular. They got like 5,000, 10,000 views. I think we may even have 20. Let's see. I'll show share a little bit from the analytics. So we have some videos that have hit, let's see, views. Yeah, so the Behind the King James Bible video. Let me share that. So I have a video. The most popular video on our channel is called Behind the King James Bible. This one got 10,000 views, but it came out on May 13th, 2024. So as soon as May 13th, 2025 hit, our hours tanked because that video was a year old. So I'm going to start doing live streams every Saturday. So hopefully the live streams help with the hour, the watch hours. And I will move on pretty soon after I release the Greek version of this video. If you want to join the Patreon for $5 a month, you can access the original Greek version of that interview that's pre-released. Even if you don't want to watch it, you can support us on Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. You can subscribe to the software. If you sign up for at least the $5 a month tier on the software, you can start taking notes. You can start bookmarking. You can start highlighting pretty soon. We got a lot of cool things that are going to be behind that $5 tier. So please either support us through the software subscription, support us through the Patreon subscription, or on both ends, or order a Timeline of the Bible poster. Helps getting in panels, helps with the numbers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all, I just gotta put in the work, get on here on a regular basis, talk about the things that I like to sort of ramble about. And, as long as I have 5 to 10 people joining in to listen, I'm glad you guys are here to support us. I think I had about 20 between I had double the numbers last week for our very first live stream, which was awesome. And hopefully a lot of people will tag in and just sort of listen to this later on and go into the comments. And even if it's negative engagement, engage in the comments, watch our content, make sure you're subscribed. ask your friends to subscribe if they're interested in this kind of stuff. It's not all about Greek, and you don't have to know Greek to really engage with this stuff. This is all like, kind of meant to be beginner friendly. Yeah, we're selling a lot of the timeline posters, which is really helping. It's very yeah. Ευχαριστώ, taleme, Adoni. So that's one of my Greek students. Again, all my Greek students, are I think benefiting from the approach. And so I encourage anyone to just go onto the Cross Bible website, scroll down to the contact form, and send me a message if you want to try. I usually do like an initial call, and then people can jump into the group class. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and I will see you all next week, hopefully. All right, take care. Taleme.